I'm Mindy Eisenberg, and my story began as the daughter of a mother with the most debilitating form of progressive MS. All of my experiences, including being a healthcare administrator, a yoga student, teacher, and therapist, brought me to the formation of Yoga Moves MS and being able to offer the gift of yoga to those impacted by MS. I am proud of the mighty Yoga Moves MS community that we have created, including our students, their families and support network, our teachers and volunteers. We all come together with a common bond to improve the quality of life for those impacted by MS. We practice yoga and we expand our knowledge about holistic health and wellness. Together, we transform challenges to triumphs. I view our community as a tapestry of interwoven stories that change lives and expand our world. When members of the Yoga Moves MS community share their stories, our connections deepen. From our Yoga Moves MS tapestry, I present to you 3 special, inspiring individuals who will share their story with you: George, Stacy, and Marcia. Each of their stories is unique, but they share a common bond of resilience and hope. Let them grab your attention, engage your imagination, and open your belief to a world full of possibilities. Please join the Yoga Moves MS community and share your story with us.
My name is George Athanasopoulos. I'm 54 years old. I used to play in a competitive men's baseball league. I was diagnosed at the age of 33.
My name is Stacy Hirsch. I'm studying at the University of Michigan. I'm studying movement science in the School of Kinesiology on a pre-med track. I was diagnosed when I was a freshman in high school in November of 2016.
My name is Marcia Williams. I have had MS for 24 years. I was diagnosed in '98. In 1997, let's take it back, I had just got married. That was the hardest time of my life.
I was at work and I started having numbness on the left side of my face, tingling and numbness. And I thought it was a dental problem. And it was a Friday. I'm like, now I have to wait until Monday to go to the dentist, you know.
I got numbness on my full right side of my body, from my mid-torso all the way down to my foot, extending to my arm. I was completely numb.
It started with my eyes, and I couldn't see. It was like double vision, blurry vision. So I went and got my eyes checked, and they told me, you need to go and see a neurologist, and they didn't tell me why. I never understood that.
So we went to the ER. They kept me overnight. They ran tests. They checked out, my carotid artery. The next morning, a neurologist came in and he gave me some tests, and it's almost like he knew. Then 2 months later, I was diagnosed.
I went to a neurologist who sent me to a more specialized neurologist who sent me to another more specialized neurologist, and then finally, after a few rounds of MRIs and a lumbar puncture, they were able to diagnose me.
They ran a lot of tests. They says, well, maybe you have lupus. We think it's lupus. We think it's demyelination disease. Never at all did anybody say anything about multiple sclerosis. So did some more testing. The doctor says, well, we have good news, we have bad news. Well, what's the good news? Well, you don't have a lupus, you don't have demyelination, but you have MS.
I can no longer work. I need my forearm crutches and my walker. I don't drive because I have the foot drop.
I had a teenager in school, a new husband, no job because of MS. So what do I do?
I used to go to these dinners a lot to where the drug companies would host and the neurologists would talk. and a neurologist named Dr. Voci. I remember this so vividly. Dr. Voci's talking, I'm talking to my friends, I'm enjoying my food, and he said something about yoga. And it crossed my mind, I'm like, yeah, yoga, right, that's cute, you know. I used to play baseball, I used to play football, I'm like I'm gonna do yoga, I'm like, you know. So he said, if you want, after the event's over, I have these flyers here to pick up. So, you know, I didn't think nothing of it. We're getting ready to go. My wife says, are you gonna go get a flyer? She goes, you should go get a flyer. And I know when my wife says something, I better listen to her.
When I took a class, and after the class, I just felt so relieved, so relaxed. My pains were like barely there. I felt like at that moment, I never even had MS.
And I remember going in there meeting so many wonderful people, but the way it made me feel. I mean, I had more energy. I actually, at that time I walked with a cane. I felt better walking out, as far as the way my legs felt, more energized than I did going in. All right, I'll try it a second time too. And then I went the following week, I felt the same way. And I got to meet so many wonderful people. I was joking around, I said, you know what, it was kind of cool because for about 10, 12 ladies, I was the only guy there.
Everyone has different coping mechanisms, whether that be journaling or sitting and watching TV or going on a walk. Me and my friends really like to do walks. It's a little bit of exercise. You can talk and catch up with people while going on the walk. I eat healthy. I cook for myself.
One day, my teacher said to me, you could be a good yoga teacher, which I didn't think I could. It felt good because I used to work in the medical field. I used to help people. And I'm kind of still in the medical field because I consider myself still to be helping people. It felt really good. And I wanted to have more of that feeling. So I said, I've got to keep doing yoga.
For 6 years, I was going to Red Lotus doing yoga, practicing it. Now I still practice it at home 4 or 5 days a week.
When I was getting diagnosed with MS, there wasn't a lot of resources for pediatrics with MS. I want to be a pediatric neurologist and be able to help people.
I love Yoga Moves MS community because it's a support group for me.
The peers and the people, the friends, that we all deal with the same issues that we have in life.
When you're applying to med school, they always ask, like, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to go into medicine? And for me, like, it's very specific. This is why I want to go into medicine and help people.
People that I met in my life are just unbelievable. I have so many lifelong friends and so many great, wonderful people. And because of that, I know I'm a better person.
I'm not different. I'm the same as every other junior in college.
I would never go to another yoga class ever because nothing like Yoga Moves MS. I don't think I lost anything. I think I gained like more of a family.
I'm Mindy Eisenberg, and I am the founder and director of Yoga Moves MS. Yoga Moves MS is a vibrant community, and one of the components within the community is our small group adaptive yoga classes for people with neuromuscular conditions, such as MS, Parkinson's, spinal cord injury, cerebral palsy. So we can adapt yoga poses for anybody. It doesn't matter whether you ambulate with a cane, a walker, a wheelchair. What we're doing is helping everyone and anybody and everybody be able to do a yoga pose. Any pose can be done standing, sitting, or lying down, even in bed. We're taking the needs of the students into account. We don't have this sequence that has to be done in an order and in a time limit, but we're always adjusting based on the students in the room and what their needs are. So everything is to help the student help themselves towards their optimal state of wellness. Yoga Moves is so much more than just yoga poses. So I like to view our classes as a team, and the students are very much, every single one of them brings their smile, their energy, their contribution to the class. When students come into our room, what we mean by community is they feel like they are a contributing, vital member of our class. But not only just in the yoga room, but when they leave the yoga room, they develop strong bonds and connections. And we do some community-based activities such as our annual fundraiser that helps to feed or provide the resources for our classes. Our students asked us for resources so that they could practice yoga at home and develop their own routine. So we've developed a book that has umpteen pictures, simple instructions, and even sequences that they can follow, so no one has to remember everything that they learn in class, but perhaps this helps jog their memory, and then they're able to develop a sequence that works for them at home. Yoga Moves offers daily live Yoga Moves classes, and now we have an Adaptive Yoga Moves Anybody online on-demand library. All of our classes are taught by experienced Yoga Moves instructors. For our daily live classes, you join along in community with other like-minded students from around the world. Our web-based on-demand library is available anytime, anywhere based on your schedule and energy level. More and more are recognizing that we are a leader in providing adaptive yoga and helping others to build a community of accessible yoga out there. It's our hope that we can help communicate what adaptive yoga is, that really anybody can learn to teach adaptive yoga and to help others with adaptive yoga therapy. Our teachers are special, not only because they have these huge open hearts, but because they've taken the time to really learn what is adaptive yoga. They've learned to be creative, and then they learn our students, and our students communicate with them, and they together create what is an adaptation, what makes yoga accessible to everybody and anybody. So we started something. Yoga became this way to facilitate the growth of a community, like a spark, and then it's just taken off.
Welcome. I want to say how much I miss the MS community back in Detroit, and I wish I was there with you tonight to listen to this program. So this wellness program is about you. It is your chance to learn more about you and your MS. We are working hard to spread the message of Yoga Moves MS to new areas. We just had a very successful wellness program here in Chicago. The need is great for such programs. So tonight, listen, learn, and enjoy. This program is for you. And I miss you all very much and hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Oh, okay, great. All right. Awesome. To kick things off, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Martin Belkin, neurologist at the Michigan Institute for Neurologic Disorders in Farmington Hills, also known as MIND, one of the largest private MS centers in the country, and a Yoga Moves MS board member. Please welcome Dr. Martin Belkin.
Great, thanks. Thanks for everyone coming. So I have the pleasure of kind of introducing the program this evening. First, certainly want to thank Mindy and the whole planning committee for Yoga Moves MS for helping plan tonight's event. Certainly want to thank all the sponsors who make this all happen. So in medicine, particularly neurology, we've always been a little behind when it comes to holistically treating patients. Fortunately, in recent years, the MS provider community has come to recognize the importance of taking a more holistic approach to treating patients with MS. There's no questioning the data in the importance of treating patients early with MS and generally with high efficacy disease-modifying therapies. However, we've learned that it's as critical as it is to treat patients with disease-modifying therapies, it's equally or as near equally important to take a holistic approach and look at the patient as a whole and look at other ways that we need to treat patients in order to help them in their care. We've learned the importance of diet and its relation to inflammation. We're learning about the gut microbiome and it as a major driver of disease. We continue to accumulate evidence that physical activity or the impact physical activity has on fatigue, pain, strength, balance, and not to mention overall mood and well-being. Yoga specifically is a great form of exercise in terms of helping patients improve strength, flexibility, and as proven by the Yoga Moves MS community, can be adapted to any patient and any level of ability. Additionally, the mindfulness it provides has been proven in studies to improve the quality of life with patients with MS. The value this event brings to patients is really immeasurable. The ability to have experts in their respective fields, including MS neurologists and nurse practitioners, physical therapists, mental health professionals, nutritionists, amongst others, in one room is an opportunity rarely offered. Also, the nature of visits with healthcare providers today, the focus still remains on traditional therapies, and less time is spent on the complementary approaches to care and the value of that. I'm proud and honored, certainly, to become a board member of Yoga Moves MS in the last year. The organization has been an amazing resource for the MS community to learn, network, obtain support from both peers and professionals, and become empowered to take control of this disorder. Yoga Moves MS is dedicated to improving the lives of patients with MS, as well as helping educate their families and friends. We're able to attract some of the brightest and best in their fields to educate at these seminars and continue to work to educate those affected by MS about wellness and complementary approaches to treatment. So I really hope you enjoy tonight's event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Belkin. Wow. You guys are really beautiful. You know that? It's wonderful to, that's right. Say thank you. Say namaste. Louder, namaste. It means the light in me bows to the light in each of you. It's wonderful to be with all of you in person. For those of you who are not familiar with Yoga Moves MS, we are a community. First and foremost, that is our primary mission, is to bring the MS community together. We welcome all of you. Every single being in this room is a vital member of this community. Yoga Moves MS is a nonprofit that has provided daily adaptive yoga and meditation online and in person for over 18 years for donation only. As the interest, thank you. As the interest in science behind holistic health has grown, it was natural to take this next step and make it our mission to provide holistic health and wellness education. We are absolutely thrilled to see the response that we've had to these events. Today is our 5th forum. 2019, we were in this room. 2020, we rescheduled to virtual. Now today, we are both. You're going to be glued to listening to each of our speakers. A few reminders. This event is a hybrid. So at the same time that we have in person going on, there's a live online event going on simultaneously. About 500 people have registered. I'll be offering a movement break around 7 p.m. We have to keep to our schedule. To keep the program running, feel free to take breaks as you need to. If you need to go to the restroom, please do. We ask that you hold all your questions for the informal Q&A panel at the end, with the exception of Dr. Boster, who's going to be visiting us live in a few minutes. So he will take questions right after his presentation. For those of you here in person, you're going to write down, there's cards on the table, write down any of your questions. And there's these wonderful teachers in the room in purple t-shirts. You can hand them the cards as they walk by at the end of the presentations. Those of you online, you can put your questions in the Q&A on the webinar, and we will be looking through those questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can, but this schedule is jam-packed. All right. For those of you who are not familiar with the virtual exhibit hall, I encourage you to check it out. You can get to it through the Yoga Moves MS website. It has information about all of our speakers, their bios, their presentation slides, even some recipes in there. You will find also there's acupressure point cards, and there's so much in there. You're going to have to check it out, and you'll learn more about our wonderful, generous sponsors and exhibitors. So thank you to all of our attendees, first and foremost, for being here today. I have so many thank yous, but I'm going to keep it really quick, and I don't want to miss anybody. Namaste to our event planning committee. They put so much thought into this. We meet throughout the year, debating every single thing that's happening right now. I'm going to say their names. I have so much gratitude for them. I see one of the committee members laughing at me. Gina Beach, Laureen Branch, Marnie Sharon, Karen Cuff-Cohen, Lindsay Dems, Catherine McRae, Leah Narens, Lori Olson, Beth Stone, and Lori Svensson. I just have to say that Lori she works night and day and night to keep Yoga Moves together. And she probably doesn't like me talking about her, but it's okay. She's the one laughing over there. She's got a big smile on her face. Yes, thank you. Please clap for her. There's a lot of volunteers here today, including our fabulous Yoga Moves MS teachers in the purple t-shirts: Anna Cairns, Barbara Wilker, Betty Ann Hodges, Catherine McRae, Jill Dunphy, Deborah Henderson, and Marcia Williams. I love you all. This community, they are the fabric of the community together with the students. You guys are what make this happen. Thank you so much to our generous sponsors and exhibitors. We could not put on a program like this without their support. Our very top and upper level sponsors, Genentech and TG Therapeutics. Then we have Biogen and Bristol Myers Squibb. Our very important sponsors include Horizon, Novartis, and Sanofi, Alexion, EMD Sereno, and Meyer. We also have holistic partners and exhibitors, including the Brain Speedball, which you're going to love his presentation with Trent McIntyre, Breathe Yoga Salt, iCompanion, people are talking about them, Memorial Healthcare Institute for Neuroscience, Michigan Associates of Acupuncture and Integrative Medicine, The Mind, Michigan Institute of Neurological Disorders, Octave, Culture, Culture. Can you say that? Culture. You got that? Just Culture with a Q. Walk the line to SCI recovery. Without further ado, I give the floor back to Ann Quinnett,
Hugh, please give her a round of applause. Yay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mindy. And you know what? While I'm up here, let's give them another huge round of applause, because I have to tell you, and doing these types of events, there is a lot to it. And I'm gonna spill some tea. They were sending out emails about this thing at 11:30 last night. That's how much they care. I don't know when you ladies slept. I don't know if you have slept yet, but thank you. Thank you doesn't seem to be enough. Maybe namaste, I'll throw a namaste in there too. But thank you for what you do for this community. It's appreciated and it matters. It matters. Thank you. And this is what's interesting before I introduce the next speaker virtually, because it's the big green elephant in the room. Yes, I used to have a provisioning center called Botanic. It has been sold. I no longer have a provisioning center, but I am very excited that we're going to talk about cannabis, because cannabis, well, MS brought me into the cannabis field. And so I'm excited to have a medical professional give us some information about it. So we are excited to introduce Dr. Aaron Boster, president of the Boster Center in Columbus, Ohio. Dr. Boster is a neurologist specializing in multiple sclerosis and related central nervous system inflammatory disorders. At 12 years old, after watching his uncle suffer from MS, before treatment was available, he decided to become an MS specialist. Thank you. He earned his MD at the University of Cincinnati and completed an internship in internal medicine and residency in neurology at the University of Michigan. He has been a principal investigator in numerous clinical trials, trained multiple MS doctors and nurse practitioners, and has been published extensively in medical journals. He is a worldwide lecturer and maintains an educational YouTube channel with over 36,000 subscribers. Plus one, I'm going to add myself. He lives in Columbus, Ohio with his son, Max. Please welcome Dr. Aaron Boster, virtually, as he joins us from Ohio, and he's speaking about cannabis for MS.
Howdy. Can folks hear me? I just want to make sure that you can hear my presentation. All right, I'm getting a thumbs up. I can't see you, but you can see me. And I want to start by saying thank you to Mindy for the warm invitation. I am absolutely delighted for the opportunity to speak to everyone. Yoga Moves MS is an amazing organization, and they really have their fingers on the pulse of where the field is going. And where it's going is realizing that it's a fool who thinks that he can help a complex neuroimmunologic condition with a pill or a shot. It takes a village to live your best life despite having MS. And today I'm going to share with you an adventure that I went on that led to me becoming a medical marijuana recommender in the state of Ohio. So it starts back when I was a little kid, and Nancy Reagan said, just say no to drugs. And I grew up in a household where drugs were bad. And we fast forward through college and med school and residency and fellowship. And I'm working in Ohio as an MS neurologist. And the state of Ohio passed a law which made medical cannabis legal. And one of the indications was MS. And so I did my due diligence. I looked to the medical literature and I studied diligently, and I was completely devastated by the lack of information. There was a profound paucity of information supporting the use of cannabis. And I thought to myself, this is not for me. There isn't enough evidence to support doing this. I'm just going to not participate. And I didn't. Then something very, very interesting happened. A very dear patient of mine, a woman who's in her mid-70s, came in to see me unaccompanied. And when we were talking during the course of her visit, I said, hey, how are you doing with your sleep? Is the Lyrica helping? And she said, I'm not taking the Lyrica. I said, what do you mean you're not taking the Lyrica? She said, well, my grandson gave me a doobie, and if I puff on it before bed, I don't need the Lyrica. My feet don't hurt. Now, this is a gal that goes to church. She doesn't drink alcohol. She's a really wonderful citizen. And here she had discovered something which I didn't know what to do with. So I just put it away. And it wasn't a week later that another gal in her late 60s who didn't know the first person told me darn near the exact same story. She said, hey, listen, I stopped taking your baclofen. If I do a THC edible, she tells me, then I don't need it. I can do that instead. And over the subsequent months, I kept hearing from gals who are 60 and 70 who didn't know each other, and they were all telling me the exact same thing, that using cannabis was helping some of their MS symptoms. So I decided that either A, there was a sewing circle that thought they would play a joke on Dr. Boster, let's all tell them the same lie, or they had discovered something that was helping them lead a better life. And so I decided that was enough. It was enough that my patients were consistently reporting benefits that I needed to revisit cannabis. I needed to revisit the information, and I needed to see if I could make sense of it. And so I went back to the literature, and guess what? There wasn't really much more to share. And yet, going based on my patient's experience, I went ahead and became a medical marijuana recommender. And that was several years ago. And I'll share with you today, cannabis is a major tool to help many, many MS symptoms. And so I want to spend a few minutes with you today talking a little bit about the science of cannabis and where we have found applications in the MS Center to help patients' symptoms. So first of all, if we're going to talk about cannabis, we need to talk about the endocannabinoid system. Now, I did not make that word up. The endocannabinoid system is one of the many systems in your body, like the cardiovascular system or the nervous system or the immune system. So the endocannabinoid system is a series of receptors set up all throughout your body. And when those receptors are stimulated, they modulate or they tweak other systems. So the endocannabinoid system can tweak your inflammatory response. It can tweak appetite. It can tweak metabolism. It can tweak pain. And so it's a very interesting system. And this is set up in the human body. And the human body makes a chemical called an endocannabinoid. So you actually make these molecules, these cannabinoid molecules, which bind to your endocannabinoid system. That's really neat. Now, some of you may have heard of this plant called cannabis or ganja or weed. And cannabis is this really fascinating plant. And when cannabis grows, it produces hundreds of cannabinoid chemicals. So these are molecules called cannabinoids. They're not endocannabinoids because they're not made inside our body. They're phytocannabinoids because they're made in a plant. So, of course, we have to use some silly words. So the cannabis plant makes these phytocannabinoids. And some of them are so similar to our endocannabinoids that if we ingest cannabis, the chemicals in the cannabis plant bind to our endocannabinoid system. So we can actually trigger or stimulate the endocannabinoid system by using cannabis products. Now, as I mentioned, there are hundreds and hundreds of phytocannabinoids. The two most common, and the ones that I wanted to speak about with you today, are THC and CBD. So when you look at a cannabis product, it's very likely going to have either both of those in it or one of the two. And those are the ones that are found in the highest concentration in naturally growing cannabis. And let's start talking about THC. So THC is the most dominant cannabinoid in cannabis, and it binds beautifully to the endocannabinoid system. And in specific, it binds to a type of receptor called the CB1 receptor. Okay, so it's called CB1. And CB1 receptors are located throughout the body, including the supercomputer, the brain, all right? And so when you use cannabis and you ingest THC, it will bind to these CB1 receptors, and it can cause you to be medicated. Back when I was in high school, we had a different term for it. We called it getting high. And so now oftentimes we'll talk about the risk of being medicated because THC can have a psychoactive effect. There's a second cannabinoid called CBD, which is also in very high concentrations in the cannabis plant. And CBD does not bind to CB1 receptors. It binds to CB2 receptors. And CBD does not bind in the brain the way that cannabis does. And what's very interesting is, unlike THC, CBD has no psychoactive effects. So you could take CBD and then you could take a math test or drive a car or what have you, because it wouldn't impair you. Now, let's talk about what this THC and CBD can do for us as it relates to multiple sclerosis. If you turn to the medical literature, you will be disappointed bluntly. The reason that you'll be disappointed is because we don't have a lot of research studying cannabis and there's a couple reasons why. If I rolled a blunt and I lit it on fire and I sucked on it really hard, and then I gave it to you and you took a little puff, we both ingested cannabis, but I ingested a lot more than you. And as you can imagine, when you're doing clinical research, you need to have a metered dose. It needs to be a specific dose because you don't want someone to have a whole bunch and someone to have not very much. There's many other reasons all along the same lines that make it terribly difficult for us to study the effects of THC and CBD in a traditional medical sense. Now, the very best research that's come out is for a product that is not approved in the United States. It is approved in Canada, just north of us. And it's called Sativex. And it is an extract of CBD and THC. And it's used in an inhaler, kind of like if you have asthma and you have an asthma inhaler. And the Sativex was studied in multiple sclerosis, specifically with spasticity. And what they found was really lovely. They were able to show in multiple sclerosis that it could help with spasticity. And transparently, that's probably the very, very best data that we have. So I can't answer you with lots of scientific information about the evidence supporting THC for this and CBD for that. So instead, I'm going to share with you what I've been doing in clinic for the past 2.5 years, helping people improve the quality of their life using these products. So I have found probably 4 or 5 different areas in MS symptomatology where I think cannabis really can help a lot. The first one is insomnia. Now, let's be honest. Many, many people impacted by MS are bad sleepers, as my grandma would say. They're not good sleepers. And there's lots of reasons why people impacted by MS can suffer from insomnia. Pain, spasticity, bladder feeling full. There's a host of reasons that someone with MS has trouble falling asleep and trouble staying asleep. Now, there are a bunch of behavioral measures that I use in clinic. Meditation is one of them. Changing the bedroom, making it dark, making it cold. There's a host of things that one can do behaviorally to help facilitate sleep. But oftentimes, by itself, that's not enough. And sometimes patients will ask for medicines to help them fall asleep. And there are a bunch of sleep aids out there. And I, as a neurologist, can't stand them because they're laden with side effects. And so I have found that using either THC and CBD or just CBD by itself has been remarkable in its ability to help people with insomnia. I'm going to get into the types, the different routes of cannabis ingestion here in a little bit. But while we're talking about insomnia, I typically will have patients take 1 to 4 10 milligram THC gummies at bedtime. We titrate that. We don't just start off taking a bunch. And what I have found time and time again is I can get restorative sleep for my patient and they wake up and they don't feel impaired, which is really fantastic because if you have insomnia and don't get restorative sleep, all of your other neurological symptoms start to rear their ugly head, and it can become a very, very serious problem. And so one of the areas that I've had great success in using both THC and CBD combined or just CBD is with insomnia. Another area where I've had great success in using cannabis is treating anxiety. So many people impacted by MS suffer from anxiety. In fact, people impacted by MS are twice as likely to experience anxiety compared to the general population. And anxiety can present in 2 ways. It can be this underlining nasty sort of pit of your stomach sensation, which is kind of chronic, or you can have a frank panic attack or an anxiety attack. And both are god awful. And both are unfortunately very common in the setting of MS. Now, we can put people on medicines like antidepressant, anti-anxiety medicines, and they can take those medicines on the daily. And many times that can help someone with anxiety at a cost. There's lots of side effects. And sometimes people still have breakthrough panic attacks. And so in that case, in allopathic medicine, we reach for medicines to break the panic attack. But depending on the medicine, it can make the person, completely zonked, or it can make the person loopy, or it can make them fall asleep. And that's not going to be a great option if they're having a panic attack at work. Now, I have had great success in using CBD. I shared with you earlier that CBD has no psychoactive properties, and so it doesn't cloud the sensorium. And taking a CBD tincture or a CBD gummy has been remarkable to help patients break the anxiety path. And that's been really super. So in addition to insomnia, I've had a really good success in using specifically CBD to help with anxiety. So where else have I found value in using cannabinoids? So one huge area of my practice is dealing with spasticity. So spasticity, as you're probably aware, is when your muscles fight with one another. So if I want to bring this glass of water to my mouth, my massive bicep has to contract and my massive tricep has to relax. And in the setting of MS, because of damage to the spinal cord and brain, this information kind of gets lost. And so when my arm's trying to do this, it's also trying to do that at the same time. And I have a tug of war with my own arm or my own leg. Spasticity is very common in the setting of MS. I would submit that upwards of 70% of people with MS have spasticity. And it typically presents as spasms, like a shaking of a leg or an arm, or a cramp like a Charlie horse, which can, drop you to the ground in pain, or a stiff arm or leg that's hard to bend. And not uncommonly, this can wake you from sleep, or it can really interfere with the quality of your life for a multitude of reasons. I think that using THC or THC and CBD in combination is an outstanding way of dealing with spasticity. And in a second, I'm going to talk about different ways of ingesting cannabis, and I'm going to come back to the spasticity example because different cannabis products help with different kinds of spasticity. Similarly, I have had outstanding success in treating neuropathic pain, which is unfortunately also very common in MS, with cannabinoids. I have had success using a CBD cream, no THC in it, just CBD, and we apply it topically. And I wouldn't say that it works in all people with neuropathic pain, but it seems like well over half of the patients tell us that they have a really robust response. I have also had success in using THC and CBD gummies to help with neuropathic pain as well. So in quick summary, insomnia, anxiety, spasticity, and neuropathic pain are outstanding, in my experience, responders to cannabinoids. There's one other really interesting area that I want to share with you where I have found value in cannabis, and it's not in an area that I would have expected. I was talking to a very dear patient of mine, and we were discussing the success he's had using cannabis to help with various neurological symptoms. And he said, the biggest benefit, Dr. B, is dealing with difficult or irritable situations. And I didn't understand what he meant. I thought he meant maybe when he was feeling irritable, the cannabis calmed him down. He said, no, that's not what I mean. He said, I'll give you an example. So this guy has a Peloton bike and he loves riding his Peloton bike and he'll bike for hours, but he's developed burning in his leg when his body heats up. And so he would have burning in his left leg who is on the bike, and it will cause him to stop exercising. So he did an experiment and he used cannabis before exercise. And what he said was amazing. He said, my legs still burn, but I didn't care. I was able to keep going. It still burned, but it didn't bother me. And so now he very successfully will exercise for several hours only after he's used cannabis. Now, as we start to wrap up our discussion, I want to talk about different routes of administration, because there's lots of different ways that one can ingest cannabis. And I do not recommend taking cannabis leaves and lighting them on fire and then sucking in the smoke. Because sucking in a carbon-based smoke is super duper pro-inflammatory. It's pro-inflammatory to your lungs, but it's also pro-inflammatory to your blood vessels and to your brain. And in the same way that I don't want my patients to smoke tobacco because that can speed up MS, I also really don't want them to smoke cannabis. Now, I give this talk virtually in the great state of Michigan, a state that is very dear to me. And your laws are a little bit different than where I'm practicing just south of you in Ohio. Now, in Ohio, we don't have a recreational cannabis law. And so cannabis is available for qualifying diagnoses with a cannabis card. And MS is one of the 13 some diagnoses. And so, oh, I just forgot my point. Maybe if I have a sip of water, it'll come back. In the state of Ohio, smoking cannabis is actually still illegal. And so they've legalized medical cannabis use, but not smoking. So what are some really helpful ways that we can ingest cannabis? We first have to think about the speed of the symptom that we're dealing with. So if you're having a panic attack, you need treated right now. If you're having a spasm of your leg, you need treated right now. And so you wouldn't want to take an edible if you were dealing with an acute symptom. If you're dealing with an acute symptom, you need something that's going to act fast. And I just told you that I didn't want you to smoke a joint. So we need something else. And this is where a vape pen comes into play. So if I had a pen, I would hold it up as an example. A vape pen looks like a pen, like a Bic pen, but inside of it, it has a concentrate of liquid cannabis, oftentimes both THC and CBD. And when you suck on the pen, it heats up the liquid below the level of combustion. So there's no burning, there's no smoke, but there's vapor. And then you breathe in the vapor. And the onset of a vape pen is almost as fast as smoking a joint. It's very, very quick in a couple of minutes. And so you can imagine if you were woken from sleep with a spasm of your leg and you got a cramp and it really hurts, you could grab the vape pen, many of my patients do, and use the vape pen, and then it would calm down the spasm. Similarly, if you're woken with neuropathic pain and it hurts real bad right now, then we're going to use something that's fast like a vape pen. Now, on the other side of things, there are certain types of symptoms that we want to control in a chronic fashion. We're not looking to deal with it right away. We're looking to deal with it for hours at a time, like difficulty with sleeping. And so difficulty with sleeping, or say, if you were having baseline anxiety throughout the course of the day, not anxiety attacks, but just baseline anxiety. For those kind of situations, I don't think that a vape pen is the answer, because you would need to redose way too often. And so in that case, we use a different technique. We use an oral agent, an edible. And so in Ohio, almost every edible has 10 milligrams of THC. And I ask patients to purchase a tin and cut it in half and start with 5 to see how they respond. And the gummy doesn't kick in very quickly. On the contrary, it can take about 45 minutes to kick in. And it may peak somewhere between 1 to 2 hours, and then it may last for several hours. And so I have the patient write down, when did they first notice that it kicked in? When did it peak? When did it go away? What were the benefits and what were the side effects? And once we have all that written down, I can help them use the edible like a pill, like a baclofen pill, where they might take half of a gummy 3 times a day or something of this ilk. Now, the gummy edible on one end and the vape pen on the other end are extremes. And there's actually an option in the middle, which I think is not utilized enough. And that's tincture. So a tincture is an old apothecary term. It's like a eyedropper, like a glass eyedropper full of liquid. And inside of it is a little, bulb syringe, and you drop some medicine, and then you can drop it under your tongue. So under your tongue, there are giant blood vessels, and very quickly, about 25% of the liquid is absorbed into the large blood vessels, and it's going to kick in within several minutes, almost as fast as a vape pen. Then you're going to swallow the rest of it, and it's going to go in the stomach, and it's going to be absorbed and go through first pass in the liver, and it's going to kick in about 45 minutes, just like an edible. So if you imagine the onset of action, vape pen is fast on, fast off. An edible is slow on and very slow off. And tincture kind of has a quick onset and then a slow decline. And so keeping that in mind kind of helps us figuring out which is the best application. Now, if I could give you one piece of advice, it's to take notes, because your experience with cannabis might be very unique to you. And your girlfriend who tells you that something worked for something might help you, or it might not. And so I would strongly recommend that you keep a notebook, and so you can write down what you do. I also strongly recommend, particularly when you're first starting to use cannabis, to only do one thing a day. So if you take a 10 milligram gummy, and this is the first time you've done that, and you're not sure how it's going to work, I would not encourage you to take any more that day. And I want you to avoid the trap of the 20-year-old boy. So a 20-year-old boy has trouble waiting. And so he may take a 10 milligram gummy, and in 5 minutes, he doesn't feel anything. So then he takes another 10 milligram gummy. And then in 10 minutes, he doesn't feel anything. And he takes one more. And he ends up in the ER that night because he has a really, really bad day. And so I certainly want you to pay attention to the pharmacology so that you don't fall into that trap. Now, before I wrap up, I do want to talk about some of the side effects and risks of cannabis, because I would not be doing it justice if I didn't talk about that. And so the cannabis product is nowhere near as dangerous as I think Nancy Reagan made it sound like back in the ancient days of yesteryear, would just say no. But there are some side effects that I think are important to consider, right? Number one, we have to worry about an amotivational syndrome. People with MS can have difficulties with energy, and they can have difficulties with fatigue. And sometimes excessive cannabis use can result in an I don't care attitude. And coupled with decreased energy, that's a space that I don't want my patient to enter into. Now, fortunately, I don't see this very often at all, particularly not when you're using cannabis to treat specific symptoms, but it is something that's out there, and I just want to sensitize you to it. The second thing I want to say is that many patients can develop somewhat of a dependence to cannabis. Just like you can develop a dependence to Adderall or a dependence to a benzodiazepine like Valium, it is true that if you use cannabis regularly, you may have some difficulties when stopping, just like many, many medicines. And so I just want to make you aware of that. And lastly, I'll share with you a very rare side effect that I've seen twice, and it's a hyperemesis syndrome, where someone who uses cannabis a whole bunch starts having a weird situation in the mornings where they feel nauseated, but they can still eat. And then they start throwing up, and they throw up for a long time unless they get in a hot shower, and then it stops. And when they come out of the shower, it'll start again. Now, this is very, very rare. I've seen it twice, as I mentioned, and both times stopping the cannabis and giving a couple weeks solved that problem. My name is Aaron Boster, and as always, thank you for learning about MS with me. And specifically, thank you for letting me talk to you about my journey to become a medical marijuana recommender. I feel that medical cannabis is a tool to help improve the quality of people's lives. It doesn't slow down MS, and it doesn't treat everything there is to treat, but I am delighted that I listened to my patients. I am delighted that I looked beyond the pale of the medical literature so that I could try to help people in Central Ohio live their best life. Now, I'm going to turn to the questions. Thank you for the hearts. I see the hearts coming up, and that warms my heart. Thank you very much. And I see some questions. So unless our hosts have a different idea, I'm going to read some of the questions and then provide my answers. And you guys are amazing. Thank you for those wonderful hearts. So the first question comes from Kevin E. And he's also remote. So I'm remote and he's remote. Hey, Kevin. And he writes, am I wrong, or has the endocannabinoid system, the ECS, really only been identified, discovered, and studied in the past 15 years? No, you're not wrong. So it was only recently that we discovered that we have this endocannabinoid system in the body. Now, I'm going to date myself, but I've been out of med school a lot longer than 15 years, and I certainly did not learn about any of this when I was in school. That's a great question. Now, there's an anonymous attendee who writes, how can I get medical marijuana if it's not legal in our state? And I don't know of a way that you can do it legally. Now, I want to bring up an important point. The state of Michigan has legalized medical cannabis. Ohio, which is one state below Michigan, has made medical cannabis available. So I'm sorry, recreational cannabis in Michigan and medical cannabis in Ohio. But the federal government still views cannabis as a Schedule I substance. And if you were to travel across state lines with cannabis, that's a federal offense. And so don't do that. At present, there isn't a way that we can get you medical THC cannabis if it's not legal. I would encourage you to look into the state laws regarding pure CBD, because many states pure CBD is available and it's not controlled in the same manner. That was a great question. Thank you. So Michelle says, can you spell the inhaler product Dr. Boster mentioned? So I don't know if I can. So T-Vex. Yeah. So S-A-T-I-V-E-X. So S-A-T-I-V-E-X, Sativex. And that's not available in the United States, but it is approved in Canada. Alyssa writes, I hesitate to take cannabis because I'm afraid it will affect my balance. I already have trouble with my balance, and that is an outstanding point. And so the experiment, if you would be to try it in a safe environment and see if it hurts your balance. And if it does, as you're concerned, don't do it anymore. I really like this question because it brings up the reality that cannabis is not magic and cannabis can cause problems. And so we want to be sensitive to that, just like we would with any other medicine that we might use to help us. So Kathy Chester wrote in. Kathy is a wonderful gal that I interact with sometimes on the interwebs, on Twitter. So Kathy, great to see you. I'm told by a functional medicine MS doctor that I shouldn't use CBD because of my issues with constant kidney stones. Can Dr. Boster comment on that? And that's a really important point. So CBD can increase calcium. There is a small risk of kidney stones. And so you want to be forthcoming, in my opinion, with your doctor about what you're doing so that they can factor in all those things. Do I think that it's an absolute no? I wouldn't say that, Kathy. I still think that it might be worthwhile trying, but we're going to have to go low and slow. We're going to have to use the lowest dose possible. We're going to have to do a heck of a good job hydrating. And it's not a guarantee that we won't get ourselves into a sticky wicket. But I don't think that it's a guaranteed conclusion. I have used CBD in patients that have kidney stones without difficulties. So April writes, what if we can't?
Mindy.
Howdy.
Oh, hello. We have a question here in person. What would you recommend to help fatigue and lethargy?
So I think we have to be very careful using cannabis to help with fatigue because sometimes cannabis makes us feel relaxed. I have heard non-medical people say that certain strains of cannabis are more uplifting, and the science doesn't support that. Again, I think it's really important that you keep careful notes. If you go to a dispensary and make a purchase, you need to write down the effect. Although I personally would not turn to cannabis to help with energy or lethargy, I would probably turn to a different therapy for that specific symptom.
Thank you. Can you explain the pen use one more time?
Sure. So if you take like a liquid or this piece of paper and you light it on fire, it'll heat up to the point where it burns. That's called combustion. And when a carbon-based something burns, it makes smoke. So if you light a cigarette, you're lighting tobacco on fire and then it's making smoke and you're sucking that into your lungs. So if you have a rolled joint of cannabis and you light it on fire and it's making smoke and you're sucking in the smoke. The problem that I have with that is it's very pro-inflammatory. It can really cause a lot of inflammation, not just in your lungs, but also the blood vessels, the brain. And so that's not so good when we're trying to quell inflammation in the body. So there's another tool called a vape pen, vape like vapor. And vape, oh, there's one. I think there's an example of what a vape pen might look like on the stage right now. And so it literally
just happens to have it on hand.
Yeah, and so we might even get an example. Now, if you look at that cloud of vapor, that's not smoke, that's vapor. So can we give her a round of applause for demonstrating to us? And so a vape pen is something that you can carry in your pocket. It's discreet. It typically doesn't smell the same way that cannabis it smells if you light it. And it works very, very quickly. Now, when she pulls on that pen, when she sucks on it, it heats up the liquid cannabis inside below the level of burning. So it doesn't set it on fire, but it heats it up enough that the liquid turns into a vapor. It vaporizes, and then you can breathe in the vapor. And the thought is that that's less pro-inflammatory than breathing in smoke. Great question. Thank you. And thank you for the assistance with the example.
Okay. Yeah, that was awesome, Q. One more question. No one seems to talk about the exaggerated startle response in people with MS, but I know many struggle with it. Does cannabis help with that?
So I like this question because individual human beings have a host of individual symptoms that really bother them. And whereas I don't think there's one size fits all, we could answer that question by trying it. So you're right. The startle response can be really, really off-putting, and it can really be jarring. And so the experiment would be to try an edible cannabis product like a THC gummy, and then to have a family member sneak up on you and see if you have the same response or whether it's blunted. And that might be a really fun experiment to figure out.
Thank you, Dr. Baster. We so appreciate that you came on with us live today.
Thank you very much for having me, Mindy. This is a wonderful program. I'm so glad that I got to participate. And I hope that you guys are ready with your pens and papers and listening, because the lectures that are coming are really, really dynamic.
Namaste.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, guys. God bless.
I was wondering if I should let Mindy have this, especially when he didn't come up at the first time. I was like, I think Mindy needs a little bit of this, but I'll save it. Also, just to let you guys know, because I know that he did give you a lot of information. Some of that information was on some pamphlets that I have over at the Culture Table. And also the first Monday of every month on Facebook, I hold a Medical Monday with the cannabis nurse. She's an RN, and you can just hop on Facebook at 6:00 on the first Monday of the month and ask any question you have about using cannabis for not just MS, for any condition. But she is trained and she's an RN, and it's wonderful to have that type of medical expertise at our fingertips. All right, let's keep on keeping on. Next, we are pleased to present Sarah Johnson, a board-certified nurse practitioner at the Michigan Institute for Neurological Disorders, MIND, in Farmington Hills, Michigan. Sarah earned her Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Bradley University in 1998 and her Master of Science in Nursing from the University of North Carolina in 2005. She is a MS certified nurse and has been working in neurology since 2012. Sarah provides care for patients with MS and participates in MS clinical research. Sarah's topic today is nutrition for a healthy lifestyle. Welcome, Sarah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's so great to see so many familiar faces. I'm really happy to be here tonight. I'm happy that you are all able to join us as well. I also want to thank Yoga Moves MS for putting on this great program and really looking at MS from a holistic standpoint. So my topic tonight is nutrition, and the food started coming out. So I think this is an appropriate time for our lecture. And I think we could really talk about nutrition for the entire length of our program tonight, but I'm given 20 minutes. So I'm going to really try to give you some simplified, straightforward information that you can take home and use in your everyday life. And I wanted to ask you, I have a clicker. Okay. One thing I learned from my kids is I take my notes on my phone. So I'm not looking at text messages, it's my notes. So currently there is no specific diet recommended for individuals living with multiple sclerosis. Perfect, thank you. As Dr. Belkin mentioned earlier, diet does not replace disease modifying therapy, okay, in managing the disease. But we do feel that diet is a good add-on that helps with our outcomes in patients living with MS. Studies show that a balanced diet and a healthy lifestyles do lead to better outcomes, both clinically and with measures of quality of life. Now, there are many diets that have been researched in multiple sclerosis, and I listed all those diets here on the screen. You're more than welcome to take a picture of this, but they are on the link that you'll be able to access later on for your review. I'm not going to go through all of these diets. That would probably take me, again, the entire evening to go through. And really, as I mentioned prior, there's no one diet or protocol that's recommended for MS. Each individual is very different, and some individuals may do well with a particular diet plan that's listed on the screen. If you're an individual who does really well with a certain set of guidelines or rules, then one of these diet plans may be a good choice for you. For some individuals, that's not, doesn't work well for them. When I get asked about nutrition, my first response is, what is sustainable? We have to look at nutrition and diet. We have to look at nutrition and diet as a lifestyle, something that we can do sustainably over the course of our life, not something that we can do for a year, for 6 months. This is something that we have to address ongoing. So I put together 10 tips that you can take away from tonight and implement in your everyday life right away. The first tip is I want you to prioritize protein. Why? Prioritizing protein helps us maintain and build our muscle. It helps us to feel full, helps us feel satisfied. It helps with our satiety. And it also helps regulate our appetite, helps us with our energy, helps us with our hunger. So what are good sources of protein? I listed them up here on the screen. Fish, chicken, turkey, pork, lean beef, tofu, eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese. Okay, lots of options. The goal is that I want you to make sure you have protein at every meal. Okay. The second goal, I want you to increase your fiber. And how do we do that? We increase our fiber with vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. And why is that important? Helps with our digestion, helps with feeling fuller longer, helps us feel satisfied with our meal. It increases the bulk of your food, so helps you sustain your energy throughout the day. The goal with fiber is to get a minimum of 35 grams in a day. If you could get even 25 to 30, that would be great. The average American diet gets about 15. Okay. If you're not familiar with the types of food that have fiber, you can certainly, Google a vegetable, okay, or a fruit. For me, I usually eat a cup of blueberries every morning. A cup of blueberries has 4 grams of fiber. Okay, just for reference. Your third tip is carbohydrates are not bad, but they're not all created equal. Okay. I listed the healthy carbohydrates on the screen. Vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. These all are good sources of carbohydrates. Our vegetables can actually kind of be divided into 2 groups. We have some vegetables that are very low in calorie, low in carbohydrates. They're high in fiber. These are our leafy vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, peppers, celery. Our higher carbohydrate vegetables, we'll call them the wet starchy vegetables. Those are our potatoes, our squashes, peas, carrots, legumes, beans. Okay. Now I said beans. You might have thought beans were a good source of protein. And in fact, beans, the calories in beans mostly come from a carbohydrate. Yes, beans have protein, but they are a source of carbohydrate. So beans would contribute to your daily intake of protein, but it really is a carbohydrate. Very healthy, filling carbohydrate. The goal with carbohydrates is to go whole food, unprocessed, or minimally processed carbohydrates. The fourth tip is fat in moderation. I really want you to limit saturated and trans fatty acids. We find this in our red meats, our cheeses, our butter, our ice cream, and all of our processed food. Really want you to look at choosing healthier options of fat, and that is our unsaturated fat. And we find that in fish, nuts, seeds, avocados, and oil. All right, number 5, we gotta decrease the amount of processed food. And this is probably where a lot of us struggle. I do as well. busy lifestyle. They're convenient, they're quick, they're easy. You're hungry, you're tired, you want something quick and fast. What do we grab? We grab processed food, fast food, chips, crackers, pasta, sandwiches, white bread. These foods cause inflammation. And it's been brought up a couple times this evening with both Dr. Belkin and Dr. Boster. But these foods cause inflammation in the gut, in our digestive system. And the gut microbiome that Dr. Belkin alluded to, not going to go into depth, it's a very complex discussion, but causes some inflammation in the intestine and potentially can contribute to increased symptoms in patients who have MS. So I really want you to try to work on minimizing this group. Okay, next slide. Number 6 is consistency, not perfection. Okay, I want to stop with the good food, bad food. Okay, there's healthier food and a little less unhealthy food. Okay, let's create a really healthy relationship with food and follow the 80-20 rule, where we strive to eat really healthy 80% of the time, and 20% of the time, we have some leniency. What is that leniency? We have holidays, birthday parties, go out to dinner with friends. That's where you can potentially have your pasta or a piece of cake, some ice cream, okay? But the following day, get right back on with your healthy eating, okay? Other ways to do this is to plan ahead. Meal prep. Have your breakfasts ready every morning. You can prep that ahead of time. Prep your lunches and have lunches ready for the whole week. So that when it is time for a meal, you already have things that are prepped. You just have to mix a few things together and they're all ready. Eating at home, you tend to eat a little better, a little healthier. But, eating out is typically high in calories, high in fat. Really work on those balanced meals, the protein, fiber, serving of healthy carb, serving of healthy fat. That's going to help you stay full until your next meal. It prevents grazing, prevents snacking. And I also want you to avoid skipping meals. If you eat no breakfast, a really tiny lunch, you are starving by 4:30. Done it myself. Office is busy sometimes, busy in the morning getting kids off to school. Had a protein bar for lunch, and here comes after school. I got home from work, dinner's not ready. Okay, so try not to skip meals. Staying hydrated, basically drink more water. I think we all can do better in this category. Helps us with our energy, helps us with all vital aspects of a healthy body, healthy brain, healthy mind. Really want you to limit coffees, teas, sugary drinks, limit or avoid alcohol. The goal is 6 to 8 glasses, 6 to 8 ounce glasses every day. Now you could be sitting there thinking, I have a bladder symptom. It's hard for me to drink a lot of water. And if that is one of your symptoms, you got to come in and talk to one of your healthcare providers because there might be something that we can do to help with that symptom. Okay, next slide. Movement and exercise. This is a tough one because patients with MS sometimes struggle with their mobility. You struggle with fatigue and tiredness and motivation, getting up, getting out, transportation. There's a lot of some obstacles with exercise, but I can't stress enough the importance of movement. And whatever that movement looks for you, if it is walking, if it's a stationary bicycle, swimming, yoga, resistance bands. We want to try to maintain strength, maintain the muscle that you have. Resistance bands at home are a great way to do that. But the goal is daily movements. It's very important. And then tip number 9, we're just going to talk about several lifestyle aspects that are important with MS. Dr. Boster mentioned sleep. The goal is 7 hours or more of sleep every night. And that is a struggle for a lot of adults. It's a chronic issue. It is hard sometimes to get sleep back in a good cycle. Okay. If you're struggling with sleep, talk with your healthcare provider. Daily sunlight, and that's difficult in Michigan. Finally, just a couple weeks, the sun finally started coming out on a regular basis. But daily sunlight, especially in the morning, helps regulate our circadian rhythm. It helps our bodies make melatonin, which is natural melatonin in the body, which helps us with that sleep-wake cycle. Vitamin D. Patients with MS are chronically deficient in vitamin D, and we need to regularly check your lab work, see if we need to supplement. We do recommend complete smoking cessation in multiple sclerosis. It's very well documented in the literature that smoking does contribute to progressive symptoms in patients with multiple sclerosis. So if you're struggling with smoking and you're ready to stop, talk to your healthcare provider about ways that we can help you. Healthy weight is important. Stress management, relaxation techniques, reflection, and the importance of peer-to-peer interactions, whether it's with individuals like this and talking with each other, family members, support system. You know, COVID was pretty isolating, and some of our patients with MS struggled. So it's very important to keep that social interaction for your healthy lifestyle. And then the last tip is preventative care. Now, patients with MS, they see us quite often, and sometimes they see us as their primary care. And I can't stress enough the importance of having an internist or a primary care that oversees all of your health. They need to follow lab work, any preventative screening. So if you don't have a primary care, that's very important for an overall healthy lifestyle. All right, last slide. This is a review of all 10 tips. Again, if you want to take a photograph of this, it'll be available for you later. But these are tips that you can implement today, tomorrow, pick a couple, start working on a healthier lifestyle. If you have questions, if you're struggling with nutrition, sometimes a dietitian consult, a nutritional consult is helpful. Insurance will sometimes pay for that. Sometimes that works. I don't know, that works. I think I have plenty of time, right? Sorry, I talk fast. Go to the next one. So the recipes that Mindy asked me to add to my presentation. So I did come with a couple of breakfast ideas. So next slide, please. And this is something that I actually do myself to help keep myself accountable, to make sure I get breakfast. So overnight oats is a great thing to do. I do it on Sunday night. I make it for the whole week, Monday to Friday. It's a half a cup of oats, a half a cup of almond milk. I like almond milk. If you like skim milk, that is fine. Not a half a cup of non-fat Greek yogurt. Mix it all together, put it in the fridge. And that's all you have to do. If you want added protein, sometimes I'll add a scoop of protein powder and mix that in. Again, put it in the fridge and it's done. You get it out the next morning and you eat it. It's very delicious. I do add sometimes some almond butter. I like crunchy almond butter. It gives the overnight oats a little bit more flavor. And then for some added fiber, I'll add a half a cup of blueberries. Super easy, quick and simple. Breakfast every day. You don't have to think about it. Another option, if you have more time, is an egg scramble. Couple of eggs, any vegetable you prefer. To add more protein, you can do egg whites. I have tried cottage cheese and eggs, which I know sounds a little weird, but it's actually very delicious. Helps with the creaminess. And then having a fruit like berries or something on the side. So lunch. Prep your lunches for the week. This is another thing that I'll do on Sundays. And I actually had a patient last week who she finally started back at work. She's very excited. She's working night shift at a hospital. But she was struggling with her meal. So she said, I make a big old salad. So I'm like, that is an idea I'm going to use today. So she makes a big old salad at the beginning of the week. And then she just divides it up as she goes day by day. She takes her greens, whatever vegetables, her protein, put it in her bowl, and she's ready for work, lunch. She doesn't have to think about it. It's already done. She's tired and exhausted. It's finished, put together. To make your salad more interesting, you can add things. You can do a taco salad, put beans, maybe some corn, a little bit of cheese. That's your moderate fat. A Mediterranean salad. There's really unlimited options on salads. Protein bowl. My kids love Chipotle. It's expensive. So we will prep stuff to do protein bowls at home. And then dinner, be creative. Use the template. Protein, fiber, healthy carb, healthy fat. Use that template to make your meal. And really the options are endless. And that's all I have. So thank you for your time. And we're going to move on to the next lecture.
Thank you. Thank you. So many great tips. And I have to say, I was actually just at my doctor's appointment yesterday and I asked her about depression. It's like, should I be concerned about depression? And she says, how's your vitamin D? Take some vitamin D and then call me back, because a lack of vitamin D can actually make you feel a little down. So little tips that really help. So thank you so much. We appreciate that. Sarah Johnson, RN. And also for the people who are watching us online, thank you, thank you. We do want to let you know, though, that if you have any questions, please, please, please use the Q&A. Right, moving on. For over 25 years, Trent McIntyre has been helping people gain back their mobility, a story he knows quite well. Born with a mild form of cerebral palsy, Trent experienced pain and stiffness every day from the time he was a child. The methods Trent discovered to repair his own body became the foundation for his life's work. He is a graduate of Western Michigan University, where he completed in-depth studies in movement science, including Feldenkrais. I'm going to mispronounce all of these, by the way, so I'm going to have him redo them. Leban movement analysis, Pilates, Barteneff fundamentals, kinesiology, and anatomy. In 2015, Trent was named a presidential scholar while attending Western Michigan University. Trent speaks to audiences worldwide, sharing transformational methods and tools that have changed thousands of lives. He invented the patented Brain Speedball and the Fire Up Your Brain program. You can find Trent online at Ask Trent, where he supports a network of brain speed coaches and facilitates speaking engagements to educate the public on fun and powerful ways to enhance brain performance. Trent's topic today is optimizing your day with fun sensory training. Welcome, Trent.
Thanks, Q. You did great. So I am so inspired by this community, and I was here in 2019, and it's such a pleasure to be back because y'all are awesome. So I really love when I see people build a wellness team around themselves. It's even better when you facilitate conversations so that your doctors and specialists and Pilates teachers and yoga teachers and massage therapists and physical therapists and occupational therapists are talking to each other. And with my clients, I have the honor of often being a member of someone's wellness team. And that's a very important role in how I see the care for the clients that I see. And a couple of weeks ago, I had a client, Bob, who asked me to join him at his physical therapy appointment. And a little background about Bob is Bob was an athlete. He was an All-American lacrosse player. He's a marathon runner. And when I first started working with him 20 years ago, he had no symptoms or side effects from his MS. He pretty much lived a normal quality of life, could do everything that he wanted to do. Fast forward 20 years later, we've been working together for a long time. And now balance is an issue. He gets dizzy, he has posture struggles. Movement overall is a challenge for him. And so I go to this appointment happily and have a great conversation with his PT, where the PT shares his lens, his observations, his assessments, and I share mine. And through that collaboration, I can walk away better understanding how to serve Bob. I'm never want to be the only one in the room helping my client. I always want to be one of many that are working to achieve our clients' goals. And what was incredible is that one thing was very clear with Bob is that there was a missing piece for Bob. Like so many, like most of you here, there's a missing piece. And that missing piece is your eyes. It is the lack of eye exercise. We are told to exercise. We've been told it today. We're told it all the time. Movement, movement, movement. And I'm a movement nerd. I'm here to tell you it's important. But what's missing is eye exercise. And when I incorporated eye exercises into Bob's program, while it doesn't fix or cure his MS, his posture improved, his confidence on his feet improved, which is huge because he could barely get on upstairs. So to have more confidence, to feel like he's not going to fall, to have his dizziness reduced was just really profound. And I would have taken one of those things, but to get all three categories to be improved was pretty remarkable. And then I also give him homework. So he's very diligent about doing his own homework. So it's not just when I see him that he's doing his eye exercises, but it's every day for about 5 minutes a day, he's doing his eye exercises. Now, why the eyes? The eyes are directly connected to how well you can move your body. Eyes and movement go hand in hand. And you also probably didn't learn that in school. It's not something that's often taught. And it's really my platform I'm here to share with you. If you walk away with one thing that I say, it's that it's time to start exercising your eyes. It's crucial. When your eyes are weak, your movement is weak. And when your eyes are strong, your movement is strong. That's the bottom line. And a fun fact about your eyes is that your brain prioritizes the information that comes in through your eyes at the top of the list. Of all the senses we have in our body, the brain listens to the eyes the most and values it the most important. And that's enough to go on to really consider incorporating eye exercises. Now, side note, I'm over in my space working with many of you, having a great interaction with the Brain Speed Ball, which we'll get into in a second. And what's really awesome is that without telling any of you to have fun, to make this fun, every one of you was smiling. Not one person is playing this game with a frown on their face. And that's really important. And we'll talk about why fun matters a little bit later. So in a minute, I'm going to ask for a volunteer because I want to demonstrate the game for you. So be thinking, if you want to volunteer, I will take a volunteer in a minute. But in the meantime, I'd like all of you to experience how powerful your eyes are. And I know you're eating. It might require you to put your fork down for just about 30 seconds if you're willing to play the game with me. Because I don't have time to play the Brain Speed Ball with each one of you, but I can show you very quickly how powerful the eyes are when it comes to movement. So just sit comfortably. Make sure that any movement that I have you do feels like it's in your comfort zone. Don't strain or create stress for yourself. And I'm going to mirror you. So what I'm going to have you do is move your eyes to the right. So you're looking right like a Scooby-Doo painting. And then turn your head and keep looking to your right as far as you can. And just notice what that feels like. All right, come back to center. Do that one more time. So you take your eyes to your right, just your eyes. Now turn your head and look and keep looking with your eyes and turn your head as far as it will go and come back to center. Now listen carefully. Take your eyes to your left, but turn your head to your right. How hard is that? Yeah, it feels terrible, doesn't it? Right. If you can move your eyes and they are strong, they will let your body move freely. So while you might have limitations from MS, you have greater limitations left on the table that are opportunities to explore by strengthening your eyes. And that movement applies in both directions, up and down, right? It's pretty awesome. It's a fun party trick. You want to explain my presentation to someone, do that trick. That'll explain it. Right, so do I have a volunteer so we can show this game? Right in the back. I saw your hand first. Come on up. Mindy, is it okay if we go down here? Is that still gonna be on camera? Okay. Are you comfortable being on the stage to play the game? Awesome. Come on up. What's your name? Kim. Nice to meet you, Kim. Thanks for being here. All right, I'm gonna back up and have you come a little bit this way, just so you're not quite at the edge. We really don't want to lose you during the presentation. Okay. All right. So first of all, do you have any movements that feel really tight or stiff or restrictive for you? Okay. So I'm going to give you a couple of things to do, and we'll do a pre-test so you can see what they feel like. Y'all can see what it looks like. I can see what it looks like. And then we're going to play the game. And we'll play the game again to see if we can see any results. So we've had some pretty amazing things happen in like 1 to 5 minutes. There's so much opportunity with the eyes that it isn't about fixing you, but if we open up your eye movement, we can really create some cool results. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna have you do is let's have you face them so they can see really well. And you're just gonna, you wanna come out of the light? You're gonna turn your head to the right and left here. And so that they can see what that looks like about 4 or 5 times. You feel what it feels like. Good. Yeah. And then I'm going to have you just raise your arms up and down in front of you. You see what it feels like. Good. And then I'm going to have you just take a really, the deepest breath that you can right now. Just in through your nose and out through your mouth. You see what that feels like. We see what it looks like. One more like that. Awesome. All right. You okay? All right. That's your pre-test. Memorize that. Keep that in your mind. Okay. So let's go back to your spot here and we'll play the game. You can back up a little bit for me. So first thing, I want to make sure you can just catch the ball. Okay. So nothing special. Just make sure that you can catch the ball as it comes towards you. Awesome. And throw back. Right. I always make sure that the person can catch the ball. It's often the most abled person who's afraid of the ball, by the way. I do this with CrossFitters that have some neurological issues, and they're more afraid of the ball than you are. So you got to make sure the ball is okay. All right, keep catching the ball. Now this time when you catch it, I want you to tell me what you see on the ball. Yeah, you can look right at it and tell me what you see. Just one, just pick one. Perfect, throw back. Good. 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 Feel free to move around if you have to. You don't have to stay stuck to the ground. Good. Okay. You're doing exactly what your brain is designed to do, is to make it as easy as possible. So you might notice that there's a tendency to kind of bring it into a zone that feels kind of comfortable to see the ball. I'm going to start asking you to up level a little bit. So if I throw it here, for example, I want you to catch it there, stop it there and tell me what you see. Ready? All right. Good. Wherever you catch it, try to freeze right there. Good. Good. Nice. Good. Doing great. So she hasn't dropped it yet, so it's not hard enough. Dropping it isn't failure here. Contrary to what you might think, dropping it actually shows that we have working toward an edge, making it hard enough. All right? So make it a little bit harder for you. All right, here we go. No, not necessarily. It just tells me I can make it harder for you. Good. Nice. Good. 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 Okay, one more version. When you catch the ball, if you have a letter, tell me a word that starts with a letter. Ready? This is the one that it gets really serious. Still fun, relax. Good, you can just tell the word. Good. Good. Nice. Rest. Nice job. Give a round of applause and we'll recheck. There's no failing. So let's have you face them again. Let's start with your head range of motion, just side to side. So she said before she felt like there was tension going from spot to spot, and she doesn't feel that anymore. Do you see a difference out there? Does it look different to you? Yeah, quality of movement can oftentimes feel different and not necessarily look different. So that's why we want to go on what it looks like and what it feels like. Pretty cool, huh? Let's try your arms. Just go arms up and down. Oh, yeah. You see the difference? Yeah. Does it feel different to you? Yeah. Ooh, yeah. That's just excited. Let's try your breathing. Big breath into your nose, out through your mouth. Does that feel like a bigger capacity to you? A little less stress as you're breathing? Yeah. Nice job. Kim, that was awesome. Nice work. Yeah. I mean, I would have been happy with one thing getting better, but all three things is pretty awesome. She's out of plant. I just met Kim for the first time, I promise. How much time do I have? Jill, how much time do I have? I love it. Can I get another volunteer, please? I saw a couple hands go up, so there was more volunteers earlier. I know some of your names. I can call on you. Sure, way in the back. Come on up. I love it. Good luck. What's your name?
Carrie.
Carrie, nice to meet you, Carrie. Thanks for being up here. Do you have any limitations or movements that feel like they bug you, or I wish they could be more mobile or stronger, or how so? Oh, from pitching. I thought you said pinching. I'm sorry. Okay. So like, show me a movement that you feel like you would want to be better. Okay. Good. So we'll call that as 1. Let's have you face them just to show them that movement so they see what it looks like. And then what's the sensation for you right now? Tight pulling on the neck. Okay. And how long has that been the case? Since you stopped pitching? Right. Since last year or 3 weeks ago? Okay. Yeah. So just getting into it and it's like social. Okay. What are any other movements that you want to make stronger? Okay. Okay. How about like some kind of like lunge motion? Is it something that's more challenging for you on one side? Let's do that. Let's have you face sideways so they can see you. We'll do maybe 3 in a row on each leg. That one will be fun to see if we change. Yeah, we see it. You feel it, right? Good job. Let's do the other side. You can just do 2. Yeah. And because breathing is so important, let's have you take the breath also, just like we did with Kim. So just in through your nose, out through your mouth, 3 times. So you can get a sense of what it feels like. Okay, ready to go? Let's rock and roll. Let's go over there. Just watch the edge there. Just catching the ball, make sure that you can catch the ball, okay? It was Carrie, right? Because Carrie is an athlete and she plays softball, we're not going to play the same game. We're going to play again. It's a little bit more challenging. Good. So just tell me what you can see on the ball. Just check in, make sure you can track it, okay? Good. Feel free to reach for the ball anywhere it goes. Try to stop it in space wherever you grab it. You can walk around, you can take steps, whatever it takes you. Good. 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 Nice. Good. Good. All right, so now you're gonna close your eyes, and when I say go, you can open your eyes. I'm not gonna throw the ball till I say go. So I'm not trying to trick her, I'm not trying to hit you in the face. If it hits you in the face, that just means that you were too stumpy. Okay, all right, ready? Eyes closed. She's a little red, you okay? Are you okay? Yeah, that's right. Right. We're all here to support you. This is a great community. They're all here to support you. Yeah. Okay, so eyes closed. When I say go, you can open your eyes and play the game. Go. What do you see? Good. Close your eyes. Go. Good. Close your eyes. Go. Good. I'm gonna have you unfold your hands. Go. Nice. Good. Go. Good. Go. 5 points for me. Close your eyes. Go. Take a step, take a step. Yeah, feel free to reach for it. Go. Good. Relax for a second. Doing great. So that was a little startling, right? Yeah. So when I'm playing the game, I want to look for that startle reflex. So if the startle doesn't dissolve, then I'm going to down level a little bit, or maybe make it difficult in a different way for you. So we're going to keep your eyes open, but I'm going to have you catch it with the one hand. So I got some air taken out of this one, so you can just snag it. Wherever you grab it, try to stop it where it is and still call it the same letter the same way. Here we go. Good. Good, and then wherever you catch it, stop it right there. That brain's like, make it easy and bring it in front of you, right? So I want you to stop it wherever you catch it. That's where it stays. Okay, right there, yeah. Sure, could be a 7, could be an L. Good. Good. Now, you can only cross your midline to catch it. So if it's on this side of the body, you're gonna use that hand. If it's on this side of the body, you're gonna use that hand. Uh-huh. You got it. Here we go. Everybody does that. You're special, just not that special that way. Here we go. Good try. That hand. You'll get it. Usually it's the 4th one. Here we go. See? Good. Try to hold it across your body when you say it. Nice. Mm-hmm. Nice. Feel free to take a step if you have to. You're not frozen to the ground. Nice change. Good job. Synapses are firing. Almost. So close. It's not awful. It's a game. You can laugh on that. You can laugh and have fun about it. Nice. Righty's like, no, I will not play the game. You may not make me. Nice. Good. Both balls at the same time. 2 hands. 2 hands. 1 hand. You got it. You can. It's like this. Yeah. Good. Throw back. So you tell me what's on it. Good. Good. Try to cross your body. Good. Nice. Go. Nice. It's on fire.
6.
Good.
3.
Good.
4.
Rest. Nice job. That was a lot harder, but the startle went away. That was good. Okay, let's see your chest, and they're going to pull a cane on us. So face them. Do your arm movement. Well, it's twice the size. Do you see the twice the size? What's it feel like? Yeah, good. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, let's try your lunge. Now she's showing off. Good. Other side. Mhm. Nice. You see the difference in that? More confidence, a little more speed, a little more consistency in how your muscles are working. Try a deep breath. You feel more relaxed? You look more relaxed. Yeah. Nice job.
I always say tomato red. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Nice work.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, so that's my time for the night. I just want to leave you with this. Make sure that you keep it fun when you're playing eye exercises, because when you keep it fun, the brain stays curious and open to learning new things. Thank you so much.
Was that the? Was I the only one, like, tired and confused even watching? It's like, man, I am beat. All right. Thank you so very much, Trent. That was fantastic. And again, you guys can check him out on Ask Trent. Is that on YouTube? Fire Up Your Brain. Okay. Gotcha. All righty. Our next speaker is Megan Weigel, a nurse practitioner specializing in neurological care in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Megan is an MS certified nurse since 2005 and a nurse practitioner for over 20 years. She is a board certified advanced practice holistic nurse and earned her Doctor of Nursing practice from the University of Florida, where her research emphasis was on preventive healthcare. She served as past president of the International Organization of MS Nurses and the co-founder of OMS Yoga. Is it OMS Yoga?
OMS Yoga.
OMS Yoga. Got to ask about that one. A nonprofit organization that brings free yoga classes to people living with MS. And again, you can find that at omsyoga.org. She is the best-selling author of Monday Mantras with Megan, available on Amazon. Megan will be speaking to us virtually from Florida on the topic of acupressure for MS. And there are cards on the tables, right? That I think you can refer to that as well. So grab those little note cards and take notes. And let's
Virtual exhibit hall for anyone who's online.
In case you didn't hear that, they're also online on the virtual exhibit hall if you're watching the webinar. All right. And is Megan available?
I'm here. Can you see me?
Megan, yes, she is. All right.
Yay.
Fantastic. I'll leave it to her.
Hi, Megan.
Hey guys, it's so good to be with you, Trent. I'm sorry I'm not with you in person. I just did brain speedball with somebody in my office last week. It's really great. I hope you guys pick it up and try it. So, Mindy, tell me how I'm doing this. Are you driving slides? Am I driving slides?
Can you drive the slides?
Yes, let me make sure that I can share my screen. And let's see, what did I do here? Here we go. Perfect. All right. Awesome. All right. So I've got a little bit of time to talk about one of my favorite subjects and how it's relevant to you who live with MS. And my biggest takeaway today that I want you to leave with is how to help yourself with some self-acupressure points. That card was a really quick turnaround. Mindy and Lori, thank you so much for getting them out to people. I think you'll find them very helpful. The cards that are in front of you or in the virtual exhibit hall list some self-acupressure points for various symptoms. And I'd like to talk today about the healing touch of acupressure, give you a brief history of the type of acupressure that I teach, review the benefits in MS, and then provide you with some self-acupressure points for emergency care. Acupressure is acupuncture with your hands, so no needles. It's over 3,000 years old, and historians think it's actually probably older than acupuncture. Healers discovered way back in the day that stimulating certain points on the body improved health and wellness. I think that's really evident to all of us who've enjoyed a massage and felt not just that
gosh, our area of pain might feel better after the massage, but perhaps our anxiety level was better as well. So part of the physical body, it holds a lot of our physiological and emotional stresses. So acupressure is based on principles of Chinese medicine. Some of these principles are that energy flows through the body in meridians, that man is connected to heaven and earth through this chi energy, and that health requires balance between the mind, body, emotion, and spirit. And in the olden days, acupressure was passed down through an oral tradition. And really up until the mid 20th century, it was passed down through an oral tradition. There are many forms of American acupressure, and the forms are different in their technique and philosophies. I am trained in clinical acupressure of a type called soul lightening. The lineage begins with a gentleman named Master Murai. He was a Japanese gentleman who became very ill. And in dreams, he was given this information to heal himself through acupressure. He developed something that he called Jinshin Jutsu through his own healing. And he traveled around Japan sharing this tradition orally. He was called the Barefoot Doctor. At some point in his journey, he met Mary Burmeister, and she was a Japanese American who was in Japan studying her lineage. She was raised in an internment camp in America during World War II. And he asked her specifically to bring this Jinshin Jutsu to America as a gift of reconciliation and healing after World War II. And she did. Jinshin Jutsu found its way around America, and the founder of Soul Lightening Acupressure, whose name is Dr. Amina Rahim, she's a psychologist, was taught this type of acupressure from Georgia Moody. She's the founder of Soul Lightening. As we come to know it, you'll learn that there's more to Soul Lightening acupressure than the Chinese meridians. Dr. Rahim was a student and practitioner of transpersonal psychology, and she was interested in the soul as the divine essence of the human being. She saw the development and support of the chakras as important to soul consciousness. So not just including the Chinese meridians, but also the chakras in the healing system. She wove these soul principles and that of the Great Central Channel, which includes the governing and conception vessels, which are Chinese meridians, into the system of soul lightening acupressure, with the concept that this Great Central Channel is absolutely essential for soul lightening acupressure because it touches everything, and strengthening it allows integration of the body, the mind, and the soul. So much of the purpose behind soul lightening acupressure is helping a person with soul clarity and finding their soul purpose. Soul lightening acupressure uses what we call an interface touch, and that's a touch that allows, invites, and encourages the healing in the person's body. It separates the energy of the practitioner and the patient. It provides clear boundaries, and it also conserves energy for the client and the practitioner. And so what it would feel like if we were in person is just a very gentle fingertip pressure with a fulcrum or a little bit of a hook that stretches the skin. It is barely any pressure. It would almost feel like you were putting a nickel on your skin. Typical sessions of soul lightening acupressure include a balancing protocol, a central channel release, a chakra balancing, and grounding. And the evaluations for what you need are based on either your clinical complaint. So let's say I have back pain and I would like a session of acupressure around helping my back pain get better, or the assessment of the provider. So maybe I check pulses, I ask you some questions, and I devise a session based on a meridian that needs balancing, or something called process work. Process work involves you as the recipient of acupressure using cues from your own body to process through a certain situation that includes balancing the energy of your body. Sessions may last anywhere from 20 to more than 90 minutes. And even if you're just doing clinical acupressure, process may occur. And what I mean by that is many of you may have had other types of manual medicine like craniosacral therapy, massage, Reiki, even chiropractic work, acupuncture, where you had some spontaneous release of emotion. It might have been tears, it might have been laughter, it might have been a memory that popped into your head, made no sense at all. You don't know where it came from, but it's a result of the body moving energy through and letting go of, removing what it needs to let go of for a higher consciousness. So the purpose of soul lightening acupressure is to nourish, recharge, and rebalance. Dr. Rahim used to say, still says, wherever energy is flowing freely and in balance, disease cannot manifest. So let's just think about our shoulders for a second, because I'm going to give you a point for those. How many of you hold tension in your neck and shoulders? Like walk around like this all day long. It may cause neck pain. It may cause headaches. And so that energy is stuck there. When it's stuck there, the energy can't flow freely, and disease can manifest. And that disease would be considered to be the neck pain or the headache. So basic principles include energy flow in the body promotes wellness and opens new awareness. Touch and flow of love from the heart are healing and strengthening. Every person, each one of you, carries your own healing and wisdom within. And the purpose of soul lightening acupressure is to empower that individual inherent wisdom. And that's why I say that if process happens during a clinical acupressure session, that is okay. So this is a picture of the soul lightening acupressure points. There are 36 of them. They're on all of the different meridians in the body. And these primary points are all touched during a soul lightening acupressure session. But there are also other points that are consistent with acupuncture meridians that we may touch with our hands. A hand is always beneath you and always on top of you. And that we believe helps with the flow of energy. The meridians and the elements associated with Chinese medicine include fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. The fire meridians are the small intestine, the triple warmer, the heart, and the pericardium. The earth meridians are the stomach and spleen. Metal are large intestine and lung. Water are bladder and kidney, and wood are gallbladder and liver. Now, in Western medicine, we speak of our organs very differently than in Eastern medicine, we speak of meridians. So certainly some of these meridian systems may have symptoms associated with the quote organs if they're out of balance. But sometimes the symptoms associated with those meridians being out of balance are completely unexpected by a person who doesn't know Chinese medicine. So this is all that we're working with. We're also working with the chakra system. It goes all the way from the perineum up over your head to your higher consciousness. And all of these areas are addressed when we're doing soul lightening acupressure. I think I'm doing a pretty good job here with time, so I'm going to keep going at this speed. The benefits of acupressure in MS published are fatigue, pain, anxiety, and then the benefits could be any other symptom that you have related to MS. We just, take the MS out of it. There are clinical protocols for spasticity, for bladder issues, for constipation, for diarrhea, for pain in any part of the body, for nervous conditions. But the potential for harm is much lower than other things. So there's a low potential for harm. The greatest one being possible discomfort, depending on your positioning. And then also be sure that you're working with a certified practitioner. So acupressure should also be something that a person is certified to do in your state. So in the state of Florida, people who can provide you acupressure are people who are licensed to provide touch therapy. So in the state of Florida, that's nurses, massage therapists, probably physicians, I just don't know, and then rehabilitation professionals. It's different in various states. So you want to be sure that the person who's touching you is certified and licensed to touch you. And then touch and energy therapies can cause emotions to surface and release. That's what I mean by process. And because many people who live with anything, most people who are just alive are dealing with some sort of trauma, it's very important to recognize that these emotions that surface need to be dealt with. So it's important to discuss these with your practitioner and seek mental health help if necessary. If something comes up for you during a session, you're just not sure what to do with. So without further ado, let's give you some practical points here. This is a really great point for anxiety. And if you put your palm up with your palm to your face, you're going to be looking at the pinky side of your hand, just under your wrist crease. So you can go like this with your hand and you'll feel some tendons, like some spaces in between tendons. And you don't have to get too caught up in the details, but if you come down in between your pinky and your fourth digit, straight down just under your wrist crease, this is heart 7. It's also called spirit gate, such a neat name. It's called spirit gate in acupuncture. It's also, some of our soul lightning points have the same names as acupuncture points, but the names just really tell a story. This is a wonderful point for anxiety. If you hold it with a gentle pressure for 30 seconds to a minute on each side, and you can do this anywhere. I mean, you could do this while you're waiting at a doctor's visit. You could do this when you're talking to a person who makes you anxious. You just hold the point for 30 to 60 seconds. The next points are for fatigue. And believe it or not, there have been several studies that look at these specific points in acupressure for fatigue in people who live with MS. And all of them found some benefit. So the first one that you can do to yourself is the large intestine 4. It's called pain relief. And it's in this V here, in between your thumb and your first finger, like in that fleshy part, a little bit closer to your first finger. You hold that point for 30 to 60 seconds, and you would do these on both sides. And then the second point is called leg 3 miles. And it's just under the outside of your kneecap. So you can, if you put cup your kneecap in your hand and pick up your pinky finger and then move your pinky finger down below your knee about 2 or 3 centimeters. So 2 or 3 finger widths. That is leg 3 miles. And you can do both sides at the same time because it's easy. You don't need, 2 hands. You just need 2 knees. You can also cup underneath your knees with a C with your hands, and you'll grab a bunch of different points that are nice and nourishing. And then the third point is leg 3 miles. Now, leg 3 miles is about 3 finger breadths above your inner ankle bone. So the top of your inner ankle bone, just place 3 fingers. And then just above that third finger is leg 3 miles. So going in order from the little thumb pillow right here to just under the knee to leg 3 miles, which if you don't get dizzy when you bend over, you could do both of those at the same time, or you could sit on the floor and do both of those at the same time. Those are the points that have been studied and shown to be effective in improving fatigue in MS. And I would say that those points, the studies were in sessions with those points for several weeks in a row. But I also believe in the benefit of using these points on a daily basis, depending on what symptom you're trying to treat. And the last point is the one I mentioned earlier about neck and shoulder tension. This is, I love our name for this in Soul Lightning Acupressure. It's called excess baggage. And you're basically just about halfway across in between your neck and your shoulders on both sides. You're just holding that area where you feel the most tension in your neck, right on the top of your trapezius muscle there. And it just feels really good. You're putting a little pressure in there. Again, hold it for 30 to 60 seconds. So that's my really brief acupressure overview for living with MS. I hope you find the cards effective. I'm just going to go ahead and I think I can play. This is the trailer from Monday Mantras with Megan. If any of you are interested in the book, and there's a QR code here right after this that I'll leave up and you can snap on.
Megan, we're not hearing your video.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll talk it.
Are you talking, Megan?
No.
I'm just wondering.
So there was a little talking part, and I realized as it was happening that when we did last week's, it can't come through the computer like that. It has to be played on your end. So not a big deal. But acupressure can also be used as mindfulness. So doing those points for a couple of minutes each day is a mindfulness practice. My book, Monday Mantras with Megan, is a weekly mindfulness journey. So it just gives you a mantra each week to focus on for the week, moves you through the use of yoga, creative practices, essential oils, and breath work to help solidify the work behind the mantras. And the bottom line is mindfulness is so important for brain health. So I hope that you take something away from today's symposium that you can incorporate into your daily life. And I will go ahead and I think I'm going to look in the chat. Is that right?
Yeah, you can look in the chat. I do have a few questions here too.
Okay, perfect. Let's go.
While you're looking, you can multitask.
Yes.
Mindfully.
Unmindfully multitasking.
Should I try dry needling?
Well, so dry needling can be helpful for certain painful conditions and muscle spasm. It's something that in certain states, physical therapists can do. You need to make sure that the person's licensed to do it. So really the answer just depends on what you're looking for and whether or not a physical therapist can do it and would think it would be effective for you.
Okay, one other before you look at the Q&A online. Will acupressure help with swelling in my feet and ankles?
Yes, that's what I'm getting to right now online. So I guess it's the same person. So it certainly could.
Megan, can you take the QR code off and then we can see you full picture?
Oh, I didn't know. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. So yes, acupressure could help with swelling in your feet or ankles. You would need to have an assessment by a person who does acupressure to find out what protocols were needed. In my mind, swelling in the feet or ankles could mean that there's a block in your water element or in getting to or away from it. So it's a pretty sophisticated system when you're doing an assessment for acupuncture or acupressure. But if it's something that you have not made headway with in conventional medicine, then you might want to talk to an acupuncturist or someone who's certified to do acupressure.
Thank you. And for those of you in person, we do have an acupuncturist here.
Yay.
What do you see online in terms of Q&A?
So that was it. I saw Barb's question and then they couldn't hear me, which they couldn't hear that video part. So we've addressed
question. What are the points for sciatica? Are they specifically?
Yeah, so there's not a specific point for sciatica. There is a self acupressure point for back pain. It's just behind the knees. It's called back drain. And if that's a person who's on virtually, then that is, it'll be on that card that's on the virtual exhibit hall. There are protocols for sciatica. And I can't, it requires assessment. So one of the wonderful things about Chinese medicine is that every person is different. So a protocol for sciatica for the gentleman who, I think it was a gentleman who asked the question, might be different than for me.
Does acupressure work as well as acupuncture?
Yeah, so I'd be curious to hear what the acupuncturist says. My belief, so I've been receiving acupuncture for, 20 years, like regular acupuncture. Acupressure does not claim to move qi. So qi is energy. There are certain types of acupuncture where the practitioner is the mover of the qi. So we are not doing that. We're inviting the body to initiate its own healing mechanisms. So whether or not it works as well as acupuncture, I would say it works differently.
Okay. I know I've been getting it for years. It's my best nap.
Yeah, absolutely. And, acupressure is something that you can do for yourself, by using some of these points. So if you were to have a regular acupuncture practice, but you needed some, some tweaking in between or some reinforcement in between, then some of those acupressure points may be helpful to do that.
Is there an acupressure point for leg spasticity?
So I would use back drain. It's on that card. It's just behind your knees. If you put your hands right behind your knees, you can almost feel your popliteal pulse if you're a pulse whisperer like I am. But right behind your knees in the center.
Do you touch your palm close to it? Is there any pressure? You just touch?
Just take your fingertips and feel for the center of your knee and place a very gentle pressure. So as a person who practices acupressure, I feel pulses, and they're not pulses like I'm your nurse checking your pulse. They're energetic pulses. Not everyone, not other practitioners, feel pulses, but still touching those areas helps, encourages the body to move energy. So don't worry whether or not you're doing it right, just touch the points.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can acupressure bring on emotions like acupuncture does?
Absolutely. Yep.
That was easy.
Yeah, that was easy.
All right. Well, thank you, Megan.
Thank you, Mindy.
Can't wait to see you at CMSC.
Yay, I'll see you in 2 weeks. I can't wait. Thank you, guys. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much for joining our community.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, keep on standing, Mindy. But before you get ready, I do have a question. Was anyone else wondering what is dry needling? What does anyone know what that doesn't? Oh, okay. Yeah, someone can just explain what that is, because I was like, oh, is that like dry brushing? Probably not.
Julie's fantastic, by the way.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Thanks.
Hi.
Dry needling is a different. So it's performed by physical therapists who, as she said, do need to be licensed. And unlike acupuncture, dry needling we use the same needles, but dry needling is actually inserting a needle at a trigger point. It's for musculoskeletal pain and discomfort. It could be very effective. Acupuncture is, much like she said, really more of a whole body energetic treatment. So we may treat a trigger point, but we really work with the whole body. And as she also said, the assessment process is very important in acupuncture.
For on the fly answer. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And now it is time that everyone, I think, could use a good stretch, right? So we have just the right person to deliver on that. Mindy Eisenberg will demonstrate how we can all feel better right now. Thanks, Mindy.
Okay. All right, you guys ready to move? We got to do a little move. All right, I see Anna. All the yoga teachers in the room, stand up. Let's say, give them a huge applause. If you haven't met them, you should. They're wearing purple, by the way. We're going to do a little movement. And you should, for those of you in Michigan, come visit them at the classes. Yeah. And those of you online, we teach teachers all over now. So our last teacher training had people as far as Portugal and Spain. Yes. All right. Take your arms out to the side without hitting somebody and lift them towards the sky. Reach to your highest, like you're going to touch the sky. The big, beautiful blue sky. Good. Spread your fingers wildly. Make space between each one of them. Good. Now take your thumb on the inside of the palm, wrap your fingers around, and circle your wrists. Are you breathing? I forgot to say that. Circle it the other way. Open your fingers and exhale. Press down like you've got water. Slowly pressing warm water down with resistance. Wow, you guys are awesome. Take your shoulders and bring them up to your ears like they're earrings and circle them around and about. And notice how that feels good. If you haven't gotten a massage lately, this is an option. I wouldn't call it a replacement, but a really nice thing to remember to do during the day. Just circling your shoulders around and about. Great. Take your hands to the top of your thighs. Draw your chin towards your chest. We're going into cat pose. I'm assuming most of you are seated. I see Dr. Pace in the corner over there. He's doing like chair pose. Yep, he's coming up next. Take your sit bones back, Dr. Pace. Why aren't you up here? Come up here. Oh, come on. Come on. I know you're a yogi. Oh, here he comes. Yay, he thought he could hide in the back corner. I'm so sorry. All right. This is awesome. This is cool. All right. Sit bones back. Round your spine. Make cat pose. So you're rounding your spine. Your chin is to your chest. It's like you have a big brain speed ball on your lap. And then inhale. Take your shoulders, roll them up and back, and bring your sitting bones back behind you. Now we're in what's called cat pose. I'll turn to the side. You do the frontal. Oh, we're both going to go to the side and face each other. This is fun. Exhale, round, chin to chest. That's the cat pose. Inhale, lift your heart and take your sitting bones back. Should we make Dr. Pace stay here for a while?
Thanks.
All right, stand on up. Take your arms out to the side. Reach them up towards the sky. Side bend time. We're going to go one way and then the other. Doesn't matter whether you go right or left. Take a side bend now towards your right. Those of us as yoga teachers and Pilates instructors who've been teaching online for so long, we do the opposite and mirror, and then we go, which way was I in person? Inhale the up, reach up high, and then exhale, side bend the other way. Notice how this is feeling. Just this movement. This is yoga. I'm on a mission, Dr. Pace. All these people are afraid of yoga. Can you imagine? Inhale, reach up. Exhale, flow your arms down by your side. Take an inhale, bring your hands to your belly. I know you probably just had dinner for those of you on Eastern time, but breathe in and feel your belly expand as you inhale. You hear a lot of people say, take a deep breath. This is really misunderstood, that it's supposed to be like, we better exhale. Exhale out through your nose, please. So the most basic breath in yoga, we are breathing in and out through the nose, unless you're stuffy, of course. It's a slow breath. It's a diaphragmatic breath, which means the belly expands on the inhale. Try it one more time. And if you're like, I don't feel this, don't worry. Keep the practice up and come to yoga and you will learn. You agree with that? Which part? Come to yoga. Dr. Pace says, come to yoga. Learning is always good. How many breaths do we take in a day? I don't know about millions. I believe it's around 25,000. Do you do anything else that many times in a day? We better take this seriously and figure out how to breathe, because about 50% of us or more forgot. That's a fact. Take your hands to your ribs. Inhale, breathe in. Notice if your ribs are moving right and left. Exhale, breathe out. You don't need to hold your breath. Don't hold your breath. Now breathe in and out. In. Ribs expand out to the side. Exhale. Ribs settle on down. Are you feeling that? You getting in the zone here? He's getting in the zone. Oh, he knows where his chakras are. Wow. All right, this dude is cool. All right, now we're gonna pretend we're sitting in a chair to do a spinal twist, because most of these guys online, and we're assuming they're not standing, and the guys in front of us, the guys and girls in front of us, they're seated. So we're gonna have to sit, okay? All right, have a seat. Take your right hand outside your left thigh and your left hand to the back of the chair, or you can move it at a diag back behind you. Look at our wonderful model here. Keep your hips forward. Oh yeah, awesome. Take a breath in and a breath out. Oh, what are you doing coming out of that? Inhale, come back to center. Let's take our arms up overhead. Now we can't straighten up. Yeah! Take your sit bones back. Exhale now, left arm outside, right thigh, right hand to the back of the chair, the seat of the chair, or just move it in a diag back behind you. Breathe in. Breathe out. Notice the sensation of twisting. All right, now you can come back to up. And inhale, swing your arms forward and up. All right. Come on up. Oh boy. Exhale, hands at your heart. Take a breath in and a breath out, and notice how you are feeling now. Good. Whether you're seated or standing, inhale and lift your right heel, push down through the balls of the toes. And then exhale, switch it on up. Feet are so important. They help us to ground and root. It's walking in place, whether you're seated or standing. Okay. Now, you're going to take hold of your right knee. Bring your hands in front of the knee or the shin. Lift it on up. How you doing? We'll just hang out here, okay? We better work with Trent afterwards on all this stuff. All right, exhale, let it go. So you're seated and you're walking in place. Other side, lift the knee, exhale, let it go. So inhale, we lift it. Exhale, we lower it. Feel the sensation. You keep going. Feel the sensation as the foot lowers down to the earth. Sensation. The sensation could be numbness. It could be. Exhale, release. What'd you say? No falling. You can hold on. So, we don't have a lot of props up here, but in adaptive yoga, for those of you who have not done yoga online or in person, you need to be. This whole program is brought to you by Yoga Moves MS. And the idea is that yoga is a holistic health umbrella. You can use props like a podium or a wall and hold on to them when you're practicing tree pose. Okay, we're gonna stand. You guys, if you wanna stand, you can, or if it's available to you, you can stand. Hold on to the chair, hold on to a wall. If you're seated, I will give you that variation too. And Dr. Pace is gonna hold on to the podium, right? And you choose which leg you're gonna stand on first. I'm gonna go for the left one. That's my dominant leg. You know what we don't say in yoga?
Right.
He's breaking all the rules here.
My crappy. Right.
That's right. Very good. Your left leg. We don't have crappy legs. No. Oh boy. All right. We have a lot of work to do. Are you guys ready to stay here for hours and hours and hours? Because it's going to take that. We have a great leg and we have a great leg. We have a right leg and a left leg. And guess what? They're both great and they're doing the best they can. Thank you, Marcia. So your weight's on one leg or the other. For tree pose, you take your foot to the opposite, you put your opposite foot at the ankle or the shin. If you're seated, I won't make you do that, but you can take your foot, same thing, bend it out to the side, because tree pose is also a hip opener and it can be a balance pose. For many, seated in a chair with one leg in an asymmetrical way can be a balance pose. Maybe you take one arm up, maybe you take both. Which one are you doing? There's so many variations, but you got to come visit us to check it out. We are online every day. We have live classes. The wonderful teachers in this in-person room are on live. We can switch the other side now. To the other wonderful leg, switch it up, switch it up. So this leg, you may be bringing the other side up your shin. That's a possibility. You might be resting the knee on a chair next to you. But the idea is that yoga is accessible for everybody. Tree pose, by the way, can be done lying down. Thank you all. Let's take our arms up overhead, reach up high, and exhale, hands to your hearts. We are on to our next presentation. Take it away, Anquinette. Anquinette's going to introduce you first.
Please stay. Let's give them both a round of applause. Give yourselves a round of applause too. Great job. Let's stretch it out. All right. Dr. Robert Pace is a neurologist specializing in MS at the Memorial Healthcare Institute for Neuroscience in Owasso, Michigan. An hour and 20 minutes away from here. I drove yesterday. Yes. Dr. Pace completed his medical degree at The Ohio State University College of Medicine and Public Health in 2008 and received further training in neurology through a fellowship in multiple sclerosis and neuroimmunology at the University of Michigan. Dr. Pace is an active member of the American Medical Association and American Academy of Neurology and is a diplomate of the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology. He also serves as associate editor for MedLink Neurology, the leading information resource for clinical neurology, and is a guest author for Aware Now magazine. Dr. Pace is passionate about demyelinating disorders of the central nervous system and is committed to providing his patients with compassionate, personalized care and to advancing our understanding of MS through research and innovation. Dr. Pace collaborates with the Memorial Healthcare Institute for Neuroscience MS team in clinical trials. He and his partner, Dr. Cody, Cody, launched Gray Matters, a podcast focusing on MS geared to patients, caregivers, and healthcare providers. Gray Matters focuses on the latest advancements, research, and personal stories related to MS and can be found at memorialhealthcare.org/podcast. Dr. Pace's topic today is information for the newly diagnosed. Welcome, Dr. Pace.
Sorry, that's intro is what happens when you fail to respond to multiple emails asking to write an intro. And then someone from the hospital does it for you. I also didn't respond to the email, or apparently didn't see the email, that I was going to be doing yoga in front of 200 people while wearing a suit. So, lesson learned. Hi, everyone. I'm Rob Pace. I'm an MS neurologist at the Memorial Institute for Neurosciences in Owasso. Anybody doesn't know where it is, it's right about there. And I'm going to tell you guys a secret, but I don't want it out of this room. So 200 people, whoever's listening on the internet only. I really like being the person that diagnoses somebody with MS. And I don't mean that in the sense that I like it when people have MS or that I like to see people under stress or anything like that. I like being the person or being there with someone when they first hear about MS, because I know what the alternative is. And, I forgot about this. I know what the alternative is. The alternative used to be Google back in the old days, but as my son informed me, nobody Googles anymore. So now the alternative is ChatGPT. More button. How do I? Oh, okay. So now AI will answer these questions for us. So this, by the way, is not the official interface for ChatGPT. I don't know if anybody could tell. That is my shoddy PowerPoint work. Yes. So what is multiple sclerosis? And this is what most people are left having to do when they're making this diagnosis. Go ahead and hit the space bar again. And you get something like this, just keep hitting it. So I'm not going to make anybody strain their eyes to see this. Please don't. That's not the intent. Multiple sclerosis, chronic neurological, et cetera, myelin, demyelination, et cetera, lots of different types, et cetera. And this is actually, so I have read the thing, it's actually a very good answer. It's an accurate answer, and it's true. But an answer being true doesn't make it the right answer for a question that somebody's asking about themselves. And this, without any sort of context, is horrifying. Good. If I do this all the time where I'm Google searching something and I say, well, that leads to another question, that leads to another question. And then eventually this happens. And now I'm not sleeping for the next 2 days. And this is something that happens to patients with something like MS, particularly because MS can be such a horrifying condition. It's something where it can cause any symptom you can possibly imagine. And if you ask, what does MS cause? You're going to see everything in the world. But that doesn't answer the question for me, and that isn't accurate for most people. So this is actually my last slide. You can just go through it. fortunately, because I don't want to have to do this over and over again, because I don't want to give you information. I don't want to make you look at a chart or look at a definition or anything like that. I just want to invite you into the weird ways that my head conceptualizes MS and the way that I usually talk to people about it. You can think of a body in a lot of different ways. So you could think of a body as just a person. You could think of it as a collection of organs, like a skeleton holding you up, and muscles moving stuff around, and skin holding organs in. And I don't know what the other organs do. If it's not a brain, I kind of check out. But your guts, whatever. You can think about a collection of meridians. You can think about a lot of different things. But the way I tend to think about is a collection of trillions of different cells. And there are these trillions of cells living together, and they have different jobs. Like some are in charge of moving blood around from one place to another, moving oxygen from one spot to another. Some are getting rid of waste. Some are providing structure to our skeleton so that we can stand on one foot in front of everyone. In this sense, the brain, the nerve cells in the brain and spine, which is what MS affects, are the cells that are in charge of making all of the decisions for your body. And that's a pretty big job. That is a lot of stuff. So imagine for all of us have this sort of building, this sort of office tower in the middle that is filled with a billion different offices. And each office has someone doing a job. Like one job might be somebody having to squeeze your right hand. And one office might be in charge of someone sensing cold on your left thumb. And one might be in charge of recognizing the color blue, et cetera, et cetera. MS is like saying that building is prone to fires. Fire happens and causes damage. Depending on where it happens, you might get a symptom, but you might not. And you actually usually don't. And that's kind of an important point. You usually don't, because your brain is amazing at what it does. It is great at figuring this stuff out. And if a fire happens in an area, if your brain can, it'll take that job and move it somewhere else. And it does it so well that 90% of the time, you would never have a symptom. You would never know that happened. You would go about your life. All the jobs are being done. But not all of the offices are created equal. And if you happen to have a fire in certain areas, your brain might not be able to easily take that job and move it somewhere else. And that means you now have a symptom or are at risk for a symptom in the future. And I'll kind of talk about that part later. And it might be that over the next week or 2 weeks or year or 6 months or whatever, you're able to farm that job out to other areas and that symptom can improve. It might be that it never improves. It might be that it improves halfway, but sometimes gets worse. All kinds of different variations. But from that point forward, now that's part of your society of living cells. MS is probably the most variable condition in all of medicine. You have people with MS who you would never know it. They would never know it. They go through their whole lives and never have problems. You have people with MS that have horrific problems that happen really, really quickly, and everything in between. And there's a bunch of different reasons for that, but luck is one of the reasons that happens. Bad luck in this case. If people are having fires that are hitting these critical areas and symptoms are just starting to pile up versus other people that are having fires that your brain is moving jobs around, it can mean that someone with the same disease looks drastically different. But luck isn't the biggest factor. A bigger factor is how frequently these fires are happening. So if you were to take two buildings and say they're both prone to fires, what's going to happen to them in 10 years? You kind of need more information, because one of them might be prone to fires in that a fire shows up, someone leaves a coffee pot on and affects one of the walls before it goes out. And that happens every few years or so. That's multiple sclerosis, because you're at risk for it happening over and over again. Another building might have fires that show up every couple of months. And when they happen, they rip through a whole corridor. Also multiple sclerosis, same disease, huge difference for those two people, even if neither of them have any symptoms at the moment that you can see, because 90% of those fires don't cause symptoms. So many people can have this going on for a long time and not know it. But just like in an office like this, the more fires you have, the more chances you are to hit these places, and the more chances you have to pile up issues over time. Then there's sort of another layer on top of that, which is imagine that building having fires year after year, plus everything else that affects your brain negatively throughout life. Please, God, stop smoking cigarettes. Anyone? Or whatever else. At some point, you can get damage to the structure of the building. And at that point, the building can start to collapse in on itself. That's a different thing, because hitting that one with a fire hose isn't going to do anything. It's not the same process anymore. So it's still MS, but now this is what we talk about when we say progressive MS. I get the question all the time when I'm talking to someone, what kind of MS do I have? And it seems like it's a simple question to answer, but it's not. And it's not really accurate to say that there are all these different types of MS. It's that MS, just like we are changing over time. For everybody with MS, there will be fires. Not everybody will have symptoms from those fires. And some people with fires are at risk that at some point that building can start to collapse at some point in the future. And that building collapsing can look many, many different ways. So progressive MS can be something where there's a rapid decline very, very quickly over a short period of time, years or 2 or 3 years, something like that. It could be something that very, very slowly, something gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. But that is fundamentally a different thing. And it's something that's very, very difficult to treat. We're a lot better at treating the fires. So we've known about MS for 200 years. We've known that MS has something to do with the immune system for over 100 or almost 100 years. And yet we couldn't do anything about it until the 1990s. That was when the first treatment came out that actually allowed us to play a little defense against MS. And since then, we've had more and more treatments that are available that are now starting to play a little offense against MS. But all of the treatments have one job: they're fire suppression. They're there to stop new fires. Thus, they're something that is most effective overall as early as we can possibly use them, because the more fires you have over time, the higher that chance is over time. So there's ways we know about MS, a lot of tests that we can do, but by far the most important test is the MRI. MRIs are lots of fun for several hours, loud clanking noise, and at some point someone yells at you to stop moving, and then eventually it's done and we have a picture. And what that picture is telling us is the same thing that walked into this building and looked at the walls would tell us. One of the fires have happened. If you look over there, you see a big area of soot. You know, a fire happened. You don't necessarily know when, but you know it happened at some point. You come in a year later, you look again, you see a new area of soot. You know another fire happened in that chunk of time. And in that sense, you can get a sense over time of how many fires somebody is having, how frequently they're occurring. And that kind of helps us figure out what types of treatments we're going to move somebody towards. But there are many things beyond the treatments that we use for MS that are as important, and I would say actually much, much, much more important. That's why I'm glad to be at in an audience like this. We're talking about all of the other things that go into taking care of yourself, taking care of people with multiple sclerosis or any other condition, because our body doesn't exist in isolation. And if somebody is having a problem or some sort of symptom, they're at risk for that symptom to happen again in the future. And what I mean by that is that not every symptom that somebody has is going to be always present with them. Somebody, if you take an example of something like weakness in your arm gets weak and if you're having trouble moving it, but your brain is then figuring out ways to move that job to other areas and make your arm work again. So you get to a point where now your arm is functioning well. But fast forward 5 years or 10 years and you get the flu, or you get COVID, or you're under a ton of stress at work, or you're not sleeping well. And now that symptom is at risk to come back, even if it isn't something that you usually deal with. The way I think about symptoms is if you just imagine your brain, or imagine a symptom like a boulder being thrown into a lake. It's something where immediately you might get pretty big disruption, but then that boulder sort of settles down somewhere. And it might not be something where you normally see it. but the level of the lake is not always the same. It's going up, it's going down. And if something drops that level down, now those symptoms get substantially worse. And this is what happens with heat for many people with MS. There's a sort of a misconception about heat in MS that people are doing damage when they're out in hot weather, if they're in a hot tub or something like that. We used to tell patients, don't go into a hot tub because their symptoms will get worse. It's not that new damage is being caused. It's not causing a new fire, but it's dragging the level of the lake down. And that means your symptoms are going to get temporarily worse. There's many, many, many things that do that. And what we want people to do is, so one of the most important things that I'm telling a new patient with MS is that you need to do things that keep your level of the lake high. You need to be doing everything you can do to get that level up. And there isn't one thing that does that. Yoga is a great example with a ton of evidence in MS, a fantastic way of getting that level up as high as you can. There are many, many other ones. It's something where there isn't something that any one patient needs to do other than recognize that this is something that's very, very important because it's going to protect them from ever start seeing the problems that can happen over time. So the other things that I want to tell MS patients when I first see them are that it's very, very important for us to keep an eye on things. I'm not going to tell a patient you have to be on a medication or you have to be on this, or there are people that decide that they're not going to be on medications or that we don't have on medications for other reasons. That's perfectly fine. But we want to know what's going on. And that means, most importantly, coming to clinic visits, but also getting the MRIs or the blood tests or the things that we need to do, because things can go fine for people. There might be chunks of time where there's no fires. There might be chunks of time where they're doing great. But we want to know, we want to have a plan in place beforehand rather than having to catch up once these issues have started to accumulate, because it's much, much easier to prevent than to cure something. I'm happy to, I'm happy to take any questions, but none that involve me doing any sort of pose. Mindy.
People are putting their questions in the Q&A on the webinar. And then if anyone had questions for Dr. Pace, we're taking them at the end. There's one more speaker and then we'll have a panel at the end.
Okay, so don't anyone ask any questions right now. Let's save some questions. I'd be happy to answer them later. I really appreciate the opportunity of being here and groups like this, because it's something where I can tell someone until I'm blue in the face, yoga is important, diet is important, but it's a different thing when you're, sitting with the white coat on. And I see a couple of my patients around that know that I've never worn that white coat, or I haven't worn it in the last 15 years, but it's a different thing when it's coming from me than it is when it's coming from people that are living it, walking it, and seeing many people that are going through it. So I really appreciate it, your organization, what you guys do.
Thank you so much. I met someone in the one of our guests in person, and she said she just got diagnosed and she didn't know where to turn, and she was so happy that you were addressing this topic today and that she was together in community with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pace. Our next speaker, Dr. Ganyu, is a fellow at the Michigan Institute for Neurologic Disorders in Farmington Hills, Michigan. She graduated from Michigan State University College of Osteopathic Medicine and completed her neurology residency at Beaumont Health, which is now Corewell, correct? Okay. Dr. Ganyu will be presenting information on MS blood biomarkers and precision medicine. Thank you and welcome, Dr. Ganyu.
All right. Well, thank you, Mindy, for having me, and everybody at Yoga Moves MS for putting this on tonight. I'm excited to be here, and thank you all for coming. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm talking about precision medicine, aka biomarkers in MS. So the goals of my talk today are to talk about what biomarkers are, what role they play in MS, the active disease activity test, and then some final thoughts we'll go over at the end. So multiple sclerosis, as you guys know, is a neurodegenerative disease. It's a chronic disease. Although we have many treatments, early treatment is crucial to the disease and to preventing future relapses. One of the major areas of focus in MS research is the identification of biomarkers in the spinal fluid and in the blood. And the goal of this is for individualized disease management and to improve quality of care for patients. When I first had to give this talk, I thought about what are biomarkers? And to me, a biomarker is anything that you can use to monitor a patient's MS. So one thing that we commonly use, and I'm sure many people in this room have had, are MRIs. Another thing that we can do is something called OCT. OCT stands for optical coherence tomography. I'm sure some of you have had it, but basically what it is they shine a light in the back of your eye to get a picture of the retinal nerve fiber layers, and they can measure the thickness of these layers. In MS, we often look for thinning, and this can potentially correlate with disability progression. Another biomarker would be spinal fluid, which you can get from a spinal tap, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then lastly, another one would be blood tests. So we'll revisit MRI. So like I said before, I'm sure many of you have had MRI. Anytime a patient's coming in with new symptoms, we often get an MRI to determine if a patient's having a relapse. As you can see in this picture here, the patient was given contrast or gadolinium. And you can see that bright white spot on the MRI after contrast. That's a contrast enhancing lesion or an active demyelinating plaque, meaning the patient's symptoms in this case were correlating to a new active MS lesion. Some disadvantages of MRI is it's kind of a snapshot in time. So while today you might have a new lesion or today you might not, that doesn't predict if you're going to have a new lesion in 60 days. Another thing that MRI can't do is we have limited technology to monitor something we call smoldering MS or PIRA. What PIRA stands for is progression independent of relapse activity. And what that means is patients often say, I'm getting worse, but my MRIs are stable. And that's where MRI is lacking and research is headed. The next biomarkers that we'll talk about are spinal fluid biomarkers. So I'm sure a lot of people have had lumbar punctures. I'm sure some people will say they're not bad and others will say they never want one again. So some advantages to biomarkers is it can assist us with diagnosis. So one biomarker is something called O-bands or illegal clonal bands, and those can help us make a diagnosis of MS. About 90 to 95% of patients with MS will have this marker. Now, there are other biomarkers that have been found in spinal fluid, but the disadvantage to repeating these biomarkers would be most patients don't want a lumbar puncture every 6 months, and it's relatively invasive. There's one biomarker, there's many, but there's one specifically that they've studied that's been found in spinal fluid and in blood. And that's called neurofilament light. So neurofilament light is a protein. It's like I said, it's found in the blood and in spinal fluid, and it correlates with disability and axonal damage in MS. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, what is axonal damage? So an axon is basically a nerve fiber that transmits electrical stimulus to control sensation or movement. And in MS patients, these axons can become damaged and release neurofilament light. It's been reported recently that people with MS have about 60% reduction in axons at all spinal levels. While NFL is probably one of the most studied biomarkers in MS, it's also not specific, meaning it can be found in many other diseases. It can be increased in Alzheimer's, it can be increased in ALS and other neurodegenerative diseases. So while NFL is helpful, it's probably more helpful when you combine it with other biomarkers and put them together. This leads me to precision medicine. So rather than just using one test, to me, precision medicine means using multiple things and putting them together for individualized disease management with the goal of improving quality of care, assisting with diagnosis, and further evaluating disease progression. There is a company called Active that has started doing this. What they're basically doing is kind of redefining the way that we look at MS and doing what they can to make the invisible visible. So the active disease activity test is a blood test. Active looked at over 1,400 proteins and found that there were 18 specific proteins in the blood that correlate with MS disease activity. This is a quantitative test that's minimally invasive, and it provides a scalable tool to improve MS disease management. What Active does is it combines these 18 different biomarkers, and they use an algorithm to give you a score. The score categories are low risk, moderate risk, and high risk. And what this risk indicates is risk of a new relapse or new radiographic lesion within the next about 60 days. So what I'll show you next is actually an example of an active disease activity test. So if you look behind me, you can see that there's 18 different proteins. So all the 18 different proteins that I discussed, the first one being NFL, that one that we talked about that's found in both the spinal fluid and the blood. That's the first number. The second number, or the second protein, is something called GFAP, which has been found to correlate with MS disease progression. I won't talk about all 16 or I'll be here all night, but there's also 16 more proteins involved in this test. So in addition to giving you a number, they're also going to give you a percentile of where you fall. Now, I know that part can be complex for most patients, and that's why it has this algorithm, which is going to put you into a level of a risk, which I don't have on this page, but that would be that low risk, which is a score of 1 to 4, a moderate risk being a score of 4.5 to 7, or a high risk being 7.5 to 10. So who can get an active disease activity test? And the answer really is any patient who wants to learn about their potential risk of a relapse. If it's something you're interested in, you can ask your neurologist and see if it's accessible at their office. I know that we do offer it at Mind. And then something that's nice about Active is they offer a really nice financial assistance program to make it more affordable for patients. Okay, so I know I talked about a lot, but now let's talk about when we should use biomarkers. I think there's a lot of different areas that these can be useful, but four that I'm going to bring up today. So one is just routine surveillance. What's my number today? And what's my number in 6 months? So something that you can watch over time. Another thing that's interesting is, let's say you're a new diagnosis and you haven't started disease modifying therapy, or maybe you're an old diagnosis and have chosen to stay off. Sometimes it's nice to see what your score could be. And then if you decide to start disease modifying therapy, what's your score after this therapy? Obviously, the hope would be that your score would go down. The next thing would be monitoring for symptoms and relapses. I'm sure a lot of you have noticed over time that you might have an increase in symptoms, but we do the MRI and it's stable. So we say, okay, it's not correlating with a relapse. But during these times, it would be interesting to see how these biomarkers fluctuate. And lastly, it could even possibly be useful to identify patients who are stable, who can safely stop disease modifying therapy. I think that's also a major area of research right now, is deciding, is it okay for me to stop disease modifying therapy? Is there a certain age that I stop? Is there a certain amount of time I've been stable that I stop? And I think right now it's very patient specific, but if they could find biomarkers that could help quantify that, that would obviously be very helpful. So I have some final thoughts. So I still think that there's a lot of research that needs to be done on biomarkers. The test I presented earlier, the active disease activity test, is used for relapses. Something that they're currently researching right now is a number that's more focused on progression or progressive MS, which I think will be useful going forward, as I think it's still a treatment area that we should really focus on. Lastly, how can biomarkers alter treatment plans? And I think the answer is in conjunction with the whole picture, meaning by using the other biomarkers we discussed. So by using MRI and by using your clinical judgment. And I think that these have the potential to really change the future of MS going forward. Thank you.
Fantastic advice and information. Thank you, Dr. Ganyu. Finally, and last but certainly not least, Dr. Evan Smith is a rehabilitation psychologist and clinical assistant professor in the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation at the University of Michigan. He earned a bachelor's degree from Tulane University and completed his PhD in clinical psychology at Nova Southeastern University in Florida. He serves as the attending psychologist in the University of Michigan Multiple Sclerosis Center, a comprehensive center for MS care as designated by the National MS Society. His areas of practice include chronic pain, psychosocial adjustment to disability, MS, and acquired brain injury. Dr. Smith is passionate about expanding access to care, serving historically marginalized, underserved communities, and is the co-director of the Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation Health Equity and Anti-Racism Task Force. Dr. Smith will round out our fantastic group of speakers with his talk on optimized motivation toward a life well lived with MS. Welcome, Dr. Smith.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah, great. Okay. Well, that was a really lovely introduction. Thank you so much. It's really wonderful to be with everyone here today. Is that too loud or is that okay? It's good. Okay. Just a couple of disclosures. I've received an honorarium to be here today. The presentation today is just a reflection of my opinions. They're not meant to be psychological treatment. I am a psychologist, but I might not be your psychologist. So just make sure that you take that into account. You've heard from some really amazing experts here today. I also just wanted to recognize that every single person here and at home is the world's foremost expert on themselves. So the information you heard today is only as good as what you apply to you. A couple of goals for today. So we're going to learn some evidence-informed approaches to understanding motivation and engagement while living with MS. We're going to learn how to navigate some barriers to motivation and engagement. We'll talk about how to set SMART goals to live the life well lived towards MS. A few topics that we'll cover today. We're going to review motivation and engagement. We'll talk about understanding values and value-based living with MS. We'll discuss some facilitators for motivation and some barriers that might inhibit motivation. And we'll also apply motivational enhancement techniques to daily living using SMART goal setting. All right, so I know some of this is small, so I'll just say it. Motivation we can think of as the reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way. So think of your motivation as your why, and we'll get into how to really assess your why in a little bit. This definition of engagement I took out of the rehabilitation literature, but they describe it as a co-occurring process and state. It incorporates a process of gradually connecting with each other and a therapeutic team, which enables the individual to become an active and committed and invested collaborator in their healthcare. So if motivation is your why, you can think of engaging as your motivation or your why in action. And each of you here have already demonstrated motivation to engage in this forum. So as we're talking about some ideas around motivation today, think about your why. What was it that brought you here today? What was it that helped you to tune in today? So I've got obviously a compass on the screen here. I think we could think of values as being a compass, a directional compass. It's a core concept to understanding motivation. On the next few slides, you'll also see an icon of a compass. But knowing your most important values can really serve as a guide to navigating any obstacles that arise on your journey. Values aren't tangible. You can't see them or smell them or taste them or touch them. They're concepts. They're ideas. They're concepts about who we are and what we hold to be meaningful. They're not a destination or a goal, but an ever ongoing framework to approach daily living. They're also not good or bad or right or wrong. Some examples of values would be creativity, independence, freedom, trust, kindness, respect. They're sort of like individualized preferences or toppings on a piece of pizza. I don't happen to like pineapple on my pizza, but that doesn't make me a good or a bad person. And if you do, it doesn't mean you're a good or a bad person. It's just individual preferences. And we know that values are generally consistent in someone's adulthood, but they tend to, evolve over our lifetime a bit. As we experience and move through life, our circumstances, our commitments, our relationships and experiences change. And so naturally our values grow in with those changes. You know, my values from 15 years ago aren't the same values I hold now because they're evolved to change with my life circumstances. And that evolution is important to recognize and evaluate with some regularity in service of creating greater alignment with what we live. And what we know from the literature is that when we are consistently behaving and acting in ways that align with our values, that tends to enhance quality of life for people living with MS. It also helps people to thrive. We also know that a misalignment between what we do and what we value leads to reduced quality of life over time and perhaps even suffering. This value-based compass can also give us some insight about our own motivations. In order to engage in an activity, a person must be willing and able. So it generally boils down to these 2 points. How confident are we that we could engage in a particular activity? And how important is it for us to engage in that activity? And that level of importance can be directly linked to how meaningful and aligned that behavior is with our most important values. So if you're wondering, how do I know what I'm ready for? There are a couple of questions you can ask yourself. On a scale from 0 to 10, with 0 being I have no confidence I could do this, and 10 meaning I'm certain I could, how confident am I that I could do this right now? And for importance, on a scale from 0 to 10, with 0 being this isn't important to me at all, or this is critically important to me as a 10, how important is this to me? The research would tell us if you're at about a 7 out of 10 for both of them, you're probably going to try it at least once. And if you're not at a 7 or a 10, the next question you can ask yourself is, well, what made me say a 5 out of 10 and not a 2 out of 10? That's going to get you thinking about what were the facilitators of my motivation. And if you're at a 5 out of 10, we don't expect you to get all the way to a 10 out of 10 in one day. Ask yourself, what would move me from a 5 out of 10 to a 5.5 today? What would have to change? That can give you some insight into what barriers you might have to navigate. So as a quick example, I am unfortunately a New York Jets fan. And let's say it's my turn to take out the trash. Now, if it's Monday Night Football and there's a minute left in the game, chances are I might have 10 out of 10 confidence I could do that, but it's not nearly going to be as important as me watching the rest of the game. Now, they're probably going to lose anyway, but I still have to watch it. Now, once that barrier is removed, the game is over. Suddenly this becomes a lot more important to me because reciprocity is important to me, cleanliness is important to me. So now it kind of moves up my priority list. And we can also see this map on the other side of the screen. The map represents any number of situations that can arise in daily life or even your goals. Your values tell you what direction to go, while your goals are the steps that help you to get closer to living the meaningful life that you want to. Now, this isn't every area of life, but these are a couple of really important areas of life that people think about when they're thinking about a life well lived. So when you're thinking about your values, how might they apply to each of these areas in life? For example, your health, how you decide to engage with your healthcare teams, what nutritional choices you make, how you go about movement. With family, taking on family roles and responsibilities. In your relationships, how you choose to communicate or connect with people or cultivate support networks. With education and work, is it about self-development? Is it about career orientation? And then spirituality, connecting with something greater than yourself or even just the community involved there. So if our values can help us to understand our motivations, let's examine how we can amplify this and how to take action and also navigate barriers that might make it more difficult to engage in action. There are a couple of important facilitators that we know can help to enhance motivation, bringing intention to every day, planning ahead of time, practice, making these things daily routine if they're meaningful to you, using your support networks, allowing them to be involved in your life, and using assistance devices. Now, there are really important barriers to engagement that I'm sure a number of you are aware of: fatigue, pain, low mood, and limited or even variable access on a day-to-day basis. So if we're thinking about how to navigate some of these barriers, let's talk about the big one, fatigue. estimated affects about 70 to 95% of people living with MS. And I'll just share with you a brief tool on what you can think about if you're trying to navigate this really important and critical barrier. And the acronym is ADAPT: awareness, delegate, adjust, prioritize, and time-based pacing. So we'll go through each one of these briefly. In order to be aware, let's think about the different sort of buckets of resources you might have on any given day. The motor or physical energy bucket, the cognitive energy bucket, and the emotional energy bucket. They're all interconnected, but we can also appreciate that if we overuse one of these areas, it might leave us susceptible to be particularly fatigued on a given day. So, for example, when we're thinking about managing our day, if you are taking a break from, let's say, lifting weights, we don't want to take a break by doing push-ups and sit-ups because that's pulling on that same area, that same bucket of resources. And similarly, if you've just been reading a textbook for 2 hours and you want to take a break, doing math problems isn't exactly going to be all that rejuvenative. So we want to think about mixing and matching these different areas of engagement. We also want to think about the patterns that we have in our life, how we behave in our life. They're not right or wrong or good or bad, but we just want to think about it in terms of alignment. And I kind of think about things in terms of short-term coping and long-term coping. Oftentimes, as well-intended as short-term strategies are, sometimes they can leave us susceptible to some unintended consequences. So on the left side of the screen here, we see that if we feel fatigued and the only solution we possibly have to managing that fatigue is resting or not doing, and fatigue is a long-term chronic issue, we might be doing a lot less in our life, and our bodies might not be as prepared to do more. So over time, we might wind up doing less and less and less, and this winds up in the underdoing cycle. Alternatively, we have this boom and bust cycle that can occur when we think to ourselves intuitively, I've got some resources today, I better use them. I'm going to go, 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 go. And then unfortunately, there's a point where our bodies tell us you can't go any further. And there's no more pushing. And that's the point where we feel burned out. It can amplify other MS symptoms. And we're forced to discontinue the thing that we wanted to be doing. So it can actually lead to low mood and suffering along the way. So over time, we tend to see that this pattern leads us to doing less and perhaps even suffering a bit more. We'll come back to a more long-term approach in just a minute. Let's talk about delegating. Some days the to-do list can really take up a lot of headspace, and some days it looks like this. And other days it might look like this. And on days where your energy might not match this type of task demand, we want to consider delegating to the ones you love, the ones that are there to support you. Think about the tasks that are of least importance to you and that you're the least confident you can do, and allow the people in your life to take those on. This strategy can allow for greater resources to engage in the things that actually mean more to you and are more accessible. Okay, next is adjust. So we're moving from thinking about functional goals in terms of one style or multiple pathways forward. The rigid approach to thinking would suggest that there is only one right way to do this. And that works really well on days where we got everything that we need. But on a day where it's variable, or we don't necessarily have the energy we need, that one approach may not work so well. The functional approach would say, there are many ways to accomplish this goal. I'm going to choose which one is most accessible to me today. So for example, on a day when the fatigue is heavy, and let's say the functional goal is to have a nutritious breakfast, well, the rigid approach would say, I have to cook a full breakfast, start to finish, crack the eggs, chop the vegetables. The functional approach looks more like, I've prepared for this. I'm really grateful for the me that was there 2 weeks ago that made those frozen breakfast burritos. And now my breakfast is going to be ready in 2 minutes. So now we're coming back to this priority list, and we're talking about prioritizing what you want to do. Prioritizing means doing the thing that means the most to you and the thing that is most accessible, and choosing where to dedicate your resources. Think of the activities that would yield the highest impact with perhaps the lowest effort and the least amount of barriers. And then we have time-based pacing. I'm not going to go into all the ins and outs of this, but this is a skill that with practice can allow you to get the most out of an activity without pushing yourself so far that you feel entirely burnt out. The strategy involves listening to your body and intentionally planning for alternating activity with rest. So for example, if your goal is to, let's say, walk with a mobility aid for 20 minutes, your body may or may not be prepared to do that. If it is ready to be walking for 5 minutes, we can set plans in place to walk for 5 minutes, rest for 3, walk for 5, rest for 3, walk, rest, rest. These intentional rest periods will provide the body an opportunity to rejuvenate, allow for less susceptibility to burnout, and allow you to do more over time, allow you to do additional things in your day. So we also now want to put this kind of into action. We understand what our motivations are to engage in meaningful activities, how to amplify this motivation and navigate barriers. So let's make a plan to actually get active. But we don't just want to set random goals. We want to set SMART goals. We want them to be specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-based. So specific means identify who might need to be involved. What will they be doing? Where is this going to happen? When is it going to happen? And how do you see it happening? Measuring. Achieving goals is usually never a straight path. Progress rarely is just linear. So acknowledging progress is really important. And we could do this if we measure our progress. So let's say using time as a component. We can understand if we're making progress to our walking goal if we've been measuring time the entire way. Action-oriented. Sometimes breaking up the big goal into small chunks allows us to approach it more easily. So think of the first 3 steps you might have to do to make this goal a reality. And then realistic. Focus on balancing optimism and a realistic approach in goal setting. What is accessible and what could I use to navigate barriers ahead of time? And then lastly, time-based. So goals should have some sort of endpoint. Set a realistic time frame in which to achieve those goals. So you might be thinking now, what can I do? Well, review and assess your own value set. As a daily practice, remind yourself of that core set of values to strengthen your compass. Identify what strengthens your motivation and how to navigate barriers. So remember, adapt for fatigue. And then even consider setting a short-term SMART goal for the next month. Ask yourself, not what's going to change my life completely, but what could I do in the next month that would move me 1% closer to the life I want to live? Now, this is just, I know it's hard to see here, but I just wanted to point out how many resources there are in this amazing MS community. This is just a scratching the surface level dive here, but these are some resources I really like. We're talking about support groups, events, social media that you can follow, consuming media, listening to podcasts. MS is thought of as a condition of literal disconnection and figurative disconnection. So having this theme where we can reconnect with our community is critically important for motivation. I really appreciate the time today. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here, and have a great night.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. And I have to add, when I was diagnosed 10 years ago this year, which is crazy, my neurologist at the time suggested that I see a neuropsychologist. And whenever I would have a session with him, he would always end it by saying, "And what are you doing for fun?" Turns out nothing. So I started doing some fun, and I actually ride horses now. And the goal in learning how to ride a horse is we tell ourselves, we just shoot for 1% better every lesson. And I have to say that just shooting for 1% is such a nice, easy way to accomplish a goal. So just shoot for 1%. I love that advice. And I had fun hearing it. So thank you. All right. It has been my absolute pleasure to be here with you guys. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We have all learned so much from such an esteemed and passionate experts in their fields. And now we want to bring Mindy Eisenberg back on stage to say a few words. Come on up.
So now we are at the end of the formal program. And we've left some time at the end for any questions that came up that were not addressed for our panel of speakers. So I have a few questions here. If anybody online or anyone in person has questions that they would like to ask, we will address them. We have a little short window of time here. All right, the first one on the top of my pile. Oh, we got two for Dr. Evan Smith. Where did you go? Oh, there you are. You think you can get away, huh? All right. How do I find a neuropsych in the Chicagoland area? How about anywhere? I didn't even know your type existed.
It's a great question. I think that actually speaks to the crisis of mental health care in the US, and that's everywhere. So if you haven't found one, it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because there just aren't a lot of mental health providers to meet the demand. And Chicagoland area, I'm not an expert there, but what I can say is the National MS Society actually has a directory of mental health providers who they've vetted. So I would go to the National MS Society for that. And if you reach out to me, if you give my contact info, I'm happy to help you search.
Hey, you heard that. We can give that out. It's not easy to get an appointment with you. Did you know that?
We're working on that.
Is there a shortage of you guys out there?
There's a shortage
and girls?
Yeah, unfortunately. But
do you take bribes?
Not out loud. Not out.
All right. The next one is, are there books to help me learn how to improve my attitude and motivation that you would suggest?
One that I really like, it's called The Happiness Trap by Stephen Hayes. That's one, it's rooted in acceptance and commitment therapy, which is an evidence-based cognitive therapy. But he's, probably the founder of acceptance and commitment therapy. And I think it's just a really nicely written book. So that would be one that I would suggest. Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions for Dr. Smith before he escapes? He has a new baby at home.
Well, I don't know which one is catching me, but I don't know where they're looking. If it's at Michigan, you can give my contact information. I can try and help out. But I would say
you're being recorded right now.
I get it. I would say for any place, as you all probably know, you're going to be your best advocates. So persistence is key. But take breaks, pace yourself. It's not easy to get appointments with specialists. So if it's somewhere outside of Michigan, that's what I would really suggest. Just make sure you're taking care of yourself along the journey, because it's not a sprint.
And meditate and do yoga.
Exactly. Yep. That's why we're here.
Meditation is like brushing your teeth. Once you get into it, you can't have a day without it. It's flossing the brain. All right. I think that's it for you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And speaking of Pace, Dr. Pace, you want to come up? We got a few questions for you. Should we have him do any yoga while he's up here?
Just answer or I can jumping jacks.
Well, you suggested it. Okay. What other doctors or holistic practitioners should I see as newly diagnosed?
There can be a lot of answers to that question because there are many different things that could help. You know, there are certain sort of blanket recommendations. I do actually usually recommend that people consider things like yoga, because there's a way to do that for absolutely everyone. It doesn't matter the physical shape that someone's in. But people have different needs, and it kind of depends on what your individual needs are. If it's seeing a psychologist, if it's seeing a physical therapist, I almost always recommend physical therapy for patients because there's always a way that all of us can get better. You could be an MS patient, you can be a professional athlete. There's always ways to improve function, and a therapist can help you adjust things. But there's a lot of people that are out there to help if you just kind of start looking. But it's sort of difficult to answer one specific person.
How do you know if the DMT you were put on is working?
How do we know that one of the disease modifying drugs is working? So the fire suppressing drugs. The MRI is probably our best tool. And that's what we're using to visualize. But it doesn't tell us the whole picture. Many people will note that there are times when they are worsening, even though their MRI is not changing. And that is reflective of the fact that the MRI just doesn't tell the whole picture of something complex like a body. So we use a lot of pieces of information. We heard about biomarkers, which are going to be blood tests that are going to be more and more helpful for us as they become available. And we try to put that piece together to give it our best guess, but sometimes we don't know.
Okay. Should we all own with Dr. Pace? You ready? You take an inhale in and you
I can do this all day.
Good. All right. This question is, why should I can't afford having expensive MRIs? Why should I continue to have them?
There's no way of answering that for any individual, and there are reasons to get MRIs. There are reasons for people that don't benefit from MRIs. There's all kinds of different situations, and to know why in any individual situation, sort of need to know the patient. The MRIs have their role. They're not the end all be all, but they do help us in some situations. So.
All right, you got some little tough questions there. Thank you, Dr. Gagnon. Thank you, Dr. Pace. Do all neurologists offer you can't see. I can't imagine why. There's this glare. Do all neurologists offer Octave disease activity tests?
I don't think that, oops, can you hear me? I don't think that they're offered everywhere, but I think most MS centers of excellence have them. But the best way to find out would be just by asking a neurologist.
What is the name of the NFL blood test?
So the name for NFL is neurofilament light. So that is a blood test. It's not always used clinically, but can be ordered. I'm not sure about the associated cost, but the active disease activity test does include NFL in it. So by getting the active disease activity test, NFL is automatically included.
When do you expect biomarkers to be widely used, or are they already widely used?
I think they are starting to be widely used, and I think that more research is continuing to come out, but I think over the next few years, we'll see them more broadly used. But that's obviously just a guess. I can't predict it for sure.
Do NFL numbers take into consideration other inflammatory diseases, or does it only look at MS inflammation?
That's a good question. So it can increase from other conditions that are not MS, and you can't definitively determine what's from MS and what's from something else. And that's why those other biomarkers are so important versus just using one biomarker.
Does Medicare pay for blood biomarkers for MS progressive? I'm not sure what that is.
So for the active disease activity test specifically, it is free to patients with Medicaid and Medicare.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you so much, Dr. Gonu. Sarah Johnson, you couldn't get away without questions. How much daily sunlight should a person get, and do the sun lamps work for that?
I believe the recommended is at least 10 to 15 minutes every day. So morning sunlight is better. Whether it's sitting in the window, out on your patio, in the shade, the sun lamps. I'm not sure that I don't know the exact answer to that. Is it had the same circadian rhythm benefits? I think from a mood perspective, especially in Michigan with not seeing the sun, these sun lamps do help with seasonal depression, feelings of feeling down when we have gloom, but I'd have to find more about the sun lamps.
Does sunscreen affect that?
Sunscreen will affect your absorption of vitamin, your production of vitamin D. Yes.
Such a balance act. Sunscreen, no sunscreen,
sunlight for the eyes
to help. Yes. What is your opinion of intermittent fasting along with a balanced diet of protein, anti-inflammatory, omega-3 rich foods, high in antioxidants?
So first I'll address just intermittent fasting. So there is some data out there that, restricting your eating window can potentially help with inflammatory symptoms. I think it's very individualized. Every individual responds differently to certain diet plans or certain ways of eating. So if that is something that you want to pursue, I think great. Go ahead and learn more about it and implement it in your everyday life. And what were the other questions? Along with the balanced diet, absolutely. Balanced diet, it's anti-inflammatory process. That's what we're talking about. Minimize your processed foods, minimize your high saturated fats, your trans fatty acids. Those all cause inflammation. So focus on protein, fiber, your fruits and vegetables, healthy carbs. Don't douse your potatoes with butter, cheese, sour cream, sweet corn with butter. Yes.
Do you have fun?
Or minimize. No, but life is balanced, like I said earlier. So
I'm kidding you. I'm kidding you. All right. I believe that ends our panel discussion. Q, please come up. We must say thank you because you have led us through an amazing program.
Sweet. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wait, I don't want to hold that. Yep. Oh, it's for you, just a
That's
little
so funny.
token.
They gave me a tree. You guys in the industry, trees.
It's a lavender holistic healing tree.
I am in the weed industry. There's only one type of tree.
You can have it inside or outside.
Thank you. It's beautiful. Thank you. You guys are great.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all online, and thank you all in person for being here tonight. You all are wonderful. Thank you to all our speakers, our sponsors, everyone who helped support this program and make it possible. Namaste.